The story begins with the strongest knight on the continent, and as you can see, he's having a rough time. That's because Cecil already knew everything. His plan, the size of his army, his spies, and even the forces funding him in this battle. In the end, the so-called strongest knight is nothing more than a toy, completely played by our boy Cecil. Just a year ago, in Cecil's father's territory, Cecil is left gasping, wondering how he's even alive. Only moments earlier, he had lost his sword in combat against the strongest man on the continent, Aiden. Aiden had brutally stabbed and wounded the Mercenary King, then turned to Cecil and asked if he had any last words. Our boy simply said he regretted chasing revenge and told Aiden to kill him already. Aiden said he was not the true heir of Perdium and that he had left home after his sister's death. Cecil asked how he knew this from another kingdom. Aiden revealed that they had joined Duke Delphine's forces to destroy his family. Our hero was stunned to learn that someone else was involved in the downfall of Perdium besides the Duke. His regret grew heavier, but in the end, the strongest knight struck and cut off Cecil's head. Back in the present, Cecil holds his neck in shock, still intact, and realizes he is young again. When a dude enters his camp, he is met with a sword at his throat. But before our Mercenary King asks something, this guy sighs in relief. It is only his young master, Cecil. Instead of backing down, he even pushes Cecil aside, surprising him with his lack of fear. He then asks if Cecil has lost his mind, since he himself was about to lead the charge against the orcs. Our hero is stunned to hear about the orcs. He asks if the man really said he fell asleep after a tantrum. The man grabs his gear, tells him to do the same, and waits outside. Our boy doesn't understand a thing until the man explains they are heading back to Perdium territory. Those words strike him like his worst nightmare. He grabs the man's shoulder and asks if he really said Perdium, his family's land that was ruined. But when he looks outside, the estate is still standing. He remembers how it turned to ash, yet here it is untouched. The man warns that if his father hears such nonsense, he might disown him. Cecil pinches himself to check if it's a dream. That's when it hits him. He is young again, his home still stands, and he has returned to the past. As a child, he resented his family for their poverty. His immature behavior born from inferiority often caused trouble, and over time, his family began to avoid him. Eventually, he ran from home, unable to face the criticism. Years later, he became the Mercenary King. He survived countless battles, gained skills and reputation, and returned to his father's land to fix his mistakes. But when he arrived, the territory was already in ruins, and so he lost everything. Now in the present, it is all still here, his precious people. He snickers, thinking how ridiculous it is to be brought back to the past. He feels like singing, but it's too soon to celebrate. Then he recalls the guys said they were here to fight orcs. How could he forget this day? By nightfall, most soldiers of this expedition will die. Back then, he insisted on joining the force sent to chase a few orcs. Only 3 were reported, and he thought he could lead without issue. In truth, more than 24 appeared, wiping out nearly all due to his stubborn lead. The orcs had no strategy, so they could win if they prepared at once. The problem is, no one will listen to the spoiled brat they believe him to be. Suddenly, a watchtower is thrown aside like a toy, and a soldier shouts that orcs are attacking. The sudden assault disappoints our boy as the orcs unleash another brutal strike on his men. Commander Scoven orders a defensive formation, but one swing of an orc's sword brings him to a halt. Faced with so many enemies, he feels doomed. A soldier yells for the commander to watch out for another incoming orc, but before it can strike, someone leaps in, grabs Scoven, and pushes him back. It's Cecil, who meets the orc's attack head-on, slicing through with brute force. The orc's arm flies off and it drops dead, leaving everyone in shock. Our boy swings his sword, wishing he could use mana, then turns back to Scovan. Sweating nervously, the commander freezes as Cecil demands he hand over the right of command. Scovan finds it absurd to ask for command while soldiers are dying, and snaps that this isn't a game. Cecil's blood is boiling, but before he can come back with a smart remark, the orcs come charging in like a tidal wave. Scovan steps up, saying he'll take care of it since Cecil's got no experience. But Cecil's had it. He hurls his sword at the orcs, and bam, it sticks right in one's forehead. The orc drops like a sack of potatoes, and Scovan's just standing there, shaking. The whole horde turns right on our guy, but he doesn't bat an eye. He shouts out that in a fight, it's not about orders or experience, but about having the fighter's spirit. Then he launches into action, cutting down orcs with crazy speed. He leaps over soldiers and enemies like it's nothing, slamming his blade into another target while everyone else just watches. Jaws dropped. Now he's pumped, yelling at the orcs to come at him, promising to take them all out. Despite looking like he's running on fumes, he fights like a swordmaster, dodging just enough to stay ahead and landing strikes on every weak spot he sees. Scovan's questioning his own sanity because even with mana, he's never moved this fast. And this kid is slicing through monsters like it's a walk in the park. Our dude yells that he's just getting warmed up, which only makes the orcs angrier as they rush him, totally calling his bluff. The soldiers freak out seeing all those orcs ganging up on him, screaming for their commander while Scovan tries to wrap his head around what he's seeing. Amidst all this madness, our guy keeps sprinting toward the cliff with the whole horde on his tail, and that's when it finally clicks for Scovan. He orders the troops to raise their shields and stick close to Master Cecil. Meanwhile, our protagonist charges headfirst into the chaos. Thinking that if Scovan's actually a decent leader, there must be a bigger plan at play here. Our boy can feel his body ready to give out, every bone screaming for him to stop, but he throws a cocky grin like he's got everything under control. In his head, he's thinking this body is weak, I could collapse any second, but you all should be fine. As the orcs stampede toward him with the soldiers right behind them, he smirks and says, "Perfect!" before diving straight off the cliff. Skoven yells at the soldiers to shove the orcs over, and in no time, they push the whole horde into the abyss. The monsters tumble down one after another, their roars fading away, and the troops cheer like the battle's over. But Skoven isn't celebrating. He's shouting for him, who's still hanging onto his sword with shaky hands. When Cecil shoots him one last grin, Skoven reaches out and tells him to grab hold, but our boy lets the sword slip, falling back with, "My body won't move anymore." Skoven is shocked, screaming his name, while our hero's vision blurs into something surreal. He sees Elena sitting there like a memory that won't fade. She asks if their mom is gone, thanks him, then suddenly snaps, demanding to know why he's been acting so weird and calling him the worst. She grabs him, begging with everything in her voice for him to come with her. That desperate plea is the last thing he hears before his eyes fly open, and he realizes he's alive. He figures the soldiers must have caught him, but part of him wonders if Elena was just a dream. His whole body is on fire with pain, proof that he pushed it too far without mana, but at least the pain reminds him he's still breathing. Then he hears a voice, Belinda, his tutor, leaning over him. She tells him he's awake at last and scolds him for being reckless, insisting the soldiers could have handled the orcs without him. Before she can say more, he hugs her tight, and she asks what's gotten into him and if he's been stupid again. Our dude just says he's glad she's here. To him, Belinda has always been more than a teacher. She was his anchor, the one person who never left his side until the day Peridium territory burned and she disappeared. He never thought he'd see her again. When he mutters that they see each other every day, he knows it's the wrong thing to say, but the weight of what he's carrying pushes him forward. He tells her seriously that Peridium is in danger. She looks at him wide-eyed and asks how he could even know that. He blurts out that he died and came back, but she brushes it off, saying he nearly died to the orcs and that's it. When she warns that he's the one truly in danger, she just laughs it off, more worried that his injuries might make him miss the upcoming festival. Belinda reminds him that Elena has been waiting for it, and that it's the perfect chance to patch things up with her. The mention of the festival hits him hard. In his past life, he never cared about it, too broken from the expedition's failure to notice anything else. He asks when it's happening, and Belinda says it's about a week away. That one word chills him, a week. His chest tightens as the memory of Elena screaming, "I'm begging you, come with me!" crashes into him again. Someone knocks at the door calling his name, but he barely hears it. All he can think about is the truth that tears at his heart. In 1 week, Elena is going to die. Their boy rushes in and gives his sister a big hug, saying he missed her. She immediately pushes him away, looking at him like he's gross. Her voice gets serious as she asks if he really thinks she'll forgive him that easily, reminding him about the time he yelled at her. He feels a knot in his chest. He knows he hasn't exactly been the best brother in his past life. He mutters an apology, but she just brushes it off and jokes about him taking a hit to the head since she heard he got taken out by orcs. He snaps back that he actually beat them, but she calmly points out that he came home on a stretcher. Clenching his jaw, he realizes nothing has really changed with his family. Regret washes over him as he remembers the festival coming up next week. Last time he let his pride stop him from going with her, and that ended up being the last time he ever saw her. This time he promises himself he won't let the past repeat. A knock brings him back to reality as 2 soldiers walk in. She scolds them, but they say the servants need her to handle the festival supplies. Belinda adds it shows how short-staffed the house has become. Shocked at how things have gotten so bad, he offers to help, only to get laughed at for acting weird. At the festival grounds, he tries again, but she waves him off, insisting the best thing he can do is stay out of trouble. He agrees on the surface, but inside, he remembers her body wasn't found there, but in the slums. Someone must have drawn her there. If he wants to save her this time, he's got to dig into the castle's secrets. Just then, an old dude, Fergus, calls out, relieved to see him alive. He admits he's been worried, but his sister interrupts, asking Fergus to take her brother back. He grumbles to himself about his crappy reputation, but decides to use the upcoming week to quietly gather some intel. Before leaving, he asks if there's a training hall. Fergus is curious, so he says he wants to train. Inside the hall, our hero is amazed. He never had anything like this in his old life. With a slight smile, he tells Fergus to live long since dying really sucks. Fergus laughs, saying he talks like someone who's been through it all. He smirks, thinking he really did die once and come back. After hearing from Fergus about how tough things are in Perdium, he reflects on his past and realizes he really messed up. He saw everyone as enemies when he was just blind to the truth. He remembers how a week after Elena's death, someone else got the blame, kicking off a territorial war that destroyed House Perdium. It hits him that her death was the first domino, and this time he promises to stop it. Step 1. Get stronger and master mana. Most people can't even feel mana, but our dude trained with it on battlefields, pulling particles from the air and making them into a core. That alone made him strong. But what really pushed him to legendary levels was a technique he developed from half a magic tome, stacking extra mana cores onto the natural one humans are born with. It massively multiplied his power. Back then, he hit 5 cores, but right now, 3 feels like his max. He knows there's a catch, though. This move guzzles mana like crazy. It gave him insane bursts of power, but it also left him completely wiped out, which is how Aiden managed to beat him. Aiden only won because he overwhelmed our hero with knights when his mana was spent. One-on-one, he's confident he would have taken the win. Even so, he decides to stick with the shaky technique for now. He silently vows that next time, he'll flip the script, take Aiden down, and get rid of Duke Delphine along with anyone hiding behind him. A week flies by, and the festival finally kicks off. Our hero rolls up to the festival, and Elena spots him right away, totally surprised that he actually showed up. He tells her that everyone from Perdium deserves a good time, but she gives him a look and reminds him he's been acting way different lately, considering he never cared about this stuff before. He jokes back, bringing up the time she called their dad annoying and said he should hurry up and pass down his title. That makes her pause and say he almost feels like his old self again. In his head, he's realizing that the past week has really changed how people see him and is slowly messing with the future. He knows the overall story might still end up the same, but every little change he makes could be unpredictable, so he has to use his knowledge wisely and adapt as things unfold. While he's deep in thought, Elena yanks his hand and pulls him through the crowd, complaining that the festival is the same every year and wishing for something new. The day seems to be cruising, along without any big surprises, until one of their soldiers suggests checking out another neighborhood where something exciting is happening this year. Elena perks up at the idea, but warns that she'll totally blame him if it turns out to be a snooze fest. As they head out, he can't help but smirk, thinking it must have been those so-called friends who were behind his little betrayal in this side quest. Jamal and Philip, Elena's so-called god knights, were supposed to be her bodyguards, but as soon as the boy saw them, he figured out they were the ones causing all the trouble. They brought her to this spot, and Jamal was all like, "We've arrived," but Elena took one look around and was instantly grossed out, wondering how anyone could perform in such a filthy place. One soldier tried to calm her down, saying the setup would start soon, but the boy caught on to what was really going on. The whole street looked like a rundown alley, but it was full of obstacles blocking every exit. She was catching on really fast, telling the boy they had to get out of there, but the soldiers were in her way. Philip suggested they chill for a bit, which made her snap, saying they were acting really weird. That's when one soldier, way too hyped, let it slip that they landed a sweet deal. Before Elena could even wrap her head around it, some dude stepped out of the shadows to confirm the deal was done. The soldier bragged about bringing Lady Elena just like they promised, and Frank, who was with the guy, noticed the hero and asked if he was the Count's son. Without thinking, the soldier threw him in as part of the deal, saying they'd hand him over for free. Elena freaked out, yelling if they really thought they could get away with this, but Jamal just laughed and told her to worry about herself, admitting they were all tired of this miserable place and that they weren't the only ones looking to escape. That's when the protagonist snapped. He charged forward, catching everyone off guard, and his words hit as hard as his punches as he called them out for betraying him. Jamal tried to hold on to Elena, but the boy's strike was relentless and he took her down in seconds. Elena, totally shaken, grabbed onto him in shock while the guys standing around just froze. One of them whispered if this was really Count Perdium's son because they'd heard he was just some kid with no combat skills. Frank stared harder and realized that even though the boy looked clueless, he had just taken out 2 knights in no time, and his moves were packed with mana. Elena called out to him, asking what was happening, but he just told her to chill and rest. Frank jumped in, thanking him for basically doing their dirty work. When Frank pushed him about hiding his skills, the boy just shrugged it off and sized them up, noticing the guy in the middle was on a whole different level while the other 2 were barely worth his time. He asked whose orders they were following, but of course they didn't answer, so he knew they wouldn't spill anything and figured he needed to wrap this up quickly. Frank ordered his men to catch him alive and break every limb, but the boy tossed a firecracker to throw them off, sliced down one attacker and clashed with another. Frank tried sneaking in from behind, but the boy blocked him clean, leaving Frank shocked at how strong he was. Then he countered by slashing at Frank's leg, making him drop his tobacco. Frank jumped back into the fight, swinging hard, but they both ended up stunned. Frank at how this kid had such bizarre sword skills, and the boy at how Frank had survived a clean neck strike. The tension was crazy, and Frank hissed that this was where the boy's story was about to end. The fight kicks off with Frank looking totally rattled, just blabbing about how wild it is that this kid has such a crazy fighting style at his age, but he keeps insisting the kid can't take him down. He charges in hard, sword flashing, but the boy stands his ground, giving it everything he's got. The impact shakes the ground, and when Frank slams his sword down, he suddenly realizes his strike just hit harder than he expected. The boy steps forward, eyes cold, pointing out that he didn't realize back then that Elena's death wasn't just a fluke, it was Frank all along, and now he's gonna pay for it. He drops his 3rd core like it's no big deal, and Frank freaks out, yelling in disbelief about how the kid's even channeling mana like that. Before Frank can catch his breath, the boy's already on him, moving so fast Frank can't keep up. Mana blasts fly through the air, and when the boy lands a hit, Frank's sword shatters like it's nothing. Stumbling back, Frank can't shake the feeling that this kid's completely different now. The kid doesn't even flinch and asks if they should keep this going before throwing out the real question, who sent him? Inwardly, Frank is panicking, but swears he won't let it end like this. He unleashes his mana in a desperate move, firing it toward Elena. The boy notices instantly, calling him out for being cheap, and makes a deal? Answer the question, and maybe he won't use that sword anymore. His aura pins Frank down so hard he can't even twitch, and the boy points out that someone with Frank's skills should be able to heal himself, unless of course his core is already fried. The look on Frank's face says it all. He's rattled to the core. Frank feels his mana spiraling out of control, knowing one mistake could blow everything up. The boy just shrugs that off, saying only amateurs lose it like that, then lands a solid hit. Caught off guard, Frank lets slip that Count Desmond is the mastermind behind everything, planning to use this chaos to start a war with Perdium and drag other families into the mess. The boy presses on, asking if Elena's death was part of the plan. Frank flips out, saying this wasn't how it was supposed to go, but he gets called out. He's taken out plenty of people before, but now he's scared when it's his turn. Desperate, Frank yells that it's all over and nobody would trust a punk like him anyway. That's when the boy drops the real bomb. He already died once and came back, so this time it's gonna end differently. With that, he takes Frank down for good. After the fight, he looks at Elena, slams the sword into the ground, and vows he won't go down without a fight again. Inside a nearby room, his memories from his past life click into place. Another body had been found here, the Degrade family's kid and his knight, set up as Elena's killers to stir up war. He realizes the whole setup and decides to wipe away any evidence before it gets out. Carrying Elena on his shoulder, he walks away. The whole mission is a total disaster. They sent guards, knights, and even Frank, their so-called top guy, and still couldn't take down one girl. He tries to shift the blame onto our boy, but the boss isn't having it, calling him out for making excuses. Frank insists that Guy isn't normal and pleads for another chance. The boss gets angry, saying he already messed things up once, but then he drops a new plan, bring in Kane Loges. Kane's young, super strong, and our boy's cousin, making him the perfect bait. After some serious warnings, the boss finally agrees to let him try. Fast forward to the Perdium training hall. Our boy is out here pulling off these mana thread tricks, basically using energy like strings, even though his mana is running low. Fergus spots him and is like, wow, didn't know you had that in you. He also thanks him for saving Elena, but our hero just brushes it off and says they should grab a bite. A few days later, the festival gets canceled. People are furious. Merchants are losing money and rumors are flying everywhere. Elena keeps insisting that our boy saved her, but no one believes her. He stays quiet, thinking it's better that way. He knows he can't stop the war forever. If he wants to stand a chance, he needs his own army. Then things start to heat up. Crowds are yelling for compensation, blaming the nobles for hoarding cash while everyone else starves. Our protagonist tells Fergus to send troops, but most of them are busy rebuilding after the orc raid. Broke, out of options, and short on soldiers, he asks Belinda for money. She reminds him his allowance got cut for overspending, so he's left with nothing. Just when he's stressing out, a soldier bursts in saying the young master Kane wants to see him. Moments later, Kane shows up, casually takes out a soldier right in front of everyone, and locks eyes with our boy like, finally found you. Kane pulls up at the tavern, and our guy spots him right away. It's the Loge's heir, his old friend turned rival. Ricardo fills him in that they were there to deal with a ruckus and ran into Kane and his knight. Things got heated when the rumors about Ghislaine started flying, and Kane completely lost it. Later, some sketchy guy suggested they fake a duel to make it look like Ghislaine's accident, promising the Loge's family a big payday. Kane wasn't thrilled about taking out his own cousin, but the lure of power was too tempting, and he went along with it anyway. This guy can't shake off the memory of how Kane always treated him like a sidekick, loud and confident, adored by everyone while he got stuck with constant comparisons. Back then, he'd clean up Kane's messes and throw down his own cash to avoid getting in trouble, but now he's done being a doormat. He tells Kane to cough up 100 gold, fair and square, for everything he covered. Kane just laughs it off and says it's more like a friendship fee, cranking the number up to 1,000. That's when this guy snaps, calls out Kane's nonsense, and warns him that if he doesn't pay up, he'll throw hands. This time, he's not letting himself get pushed around. Kane starts running his mouth, calling him a parasite and saying he's only getting bold now because he's been too nice. He swings a punch, but the guy dodges it easily and fires back, catching everyone off guard. Kane blocks the next hit but goes down, and the crowd goes wild. No one ever thought someone would actually land a hit on him. The guy calls Kane out, saying he knows that block was real, and tells him to stop pretending. Kane jumps back up, acting like it's all part of the show, and uses the moment to hype up the crowd. He accuses the guy of attacking him just for wanting the truth and challenges him to a duel. The guy doesn't flinch. He throws the challenge right back, saying Kane disrespected him in front of everyone and even laid hands on his knight, tarnishing nobility's honor. Kane smirks, warning him he's digging his own grave, but the guy remains unfazed, turning to Ricardo and telling him to rally the protesting merchants at the castle gates, promising he'll turn their frustration into something profitable. The festival gets canceled out of nowhere, and the whole mood just crashes. Tourists are stuck with cash they can't spend, but then, boom, an announcement drops. A duel is on. Young Master Kane versus Duke Ghislaine. Everyone's hyped, shouting and throwing cash at Kane like he's a guaranteed win. The whole place turns into a betting scene overnight. Kane's not happy about it though. He's like, this is a duel, not some circus. He warns that he won't hold back even if he surrenders. But our guy doesn't flinch at all. He just says the crowd's fired up and it's time to get this show on the road. The announcer moans that no one's betting on the Duke, but then Sokvan steps in, betting on our hero, and his sister backs backs him up, which finally pushes Kane over the edge. No more stalling. Let's fight! They face off. And Kane reminds him he's older, so he should go first. But then he swings his sword like, come on, let's do this. Kane dashes in at wild speed, trying to land a hit, but Duke just parries it. The crowd is screaming Kane's name, convinced the Duke won't last a hit. Belinda's on the sidelines, freaking out, saying they've got to stop this before Kane gets wrecked. Blades are clashing, sparks are flying. Kane teases the Duke for always running away back in the day, but admits he's stronger now. Suddenly, Kane lands a serious hit that sends Duke flying. Everyone gasps, thinking it's over for him. But instead of crashing, he channels some mana into his legs, flips it around, and lands perfectly. Kane freezes for a sec, shocked that his rival can just bounce back like that. Duke calls him out, claiming Kane's sword skills are weak, and he only looked tough because people were scared when he flexed. He's like, let me show you what real skill looks like. Kane laughs it off, but before he knows it, Duke rolls in super fast, slams him hard, and stomps down on his sword, keeping it locked there. The crowd totally loses it. People are shouting that the Duke has leveled up big time. Elena smirks, saying she knew this was gonna happen. Kane checks his wound and realizes it's just a scratch. Too shallow. He's confused, wondering if the Duke held back on purpose. How can this so-called underdog be this good? Then Duke pulls a crazy move. He drops his sword and says the skill gap is way too big to make this fight fun. From here on, he's going barehanded. Kane is stunned, but the Duke doubles down, insisting this duel is gonna teach him a lesson, and his fists are all he needs. Kane struts in all cocky, telling the boy to show him what he's got. The boy's like, sure thing, but let's make it a little more interesting. No weapons for me. I'll go barehanded, and to spice it up, I'll toss in 2,000 gold, doubling the original bet. The crowd goes wild, and the announcer starts hyping it up, calling for fresh bets on this barehanded showdown. The boy stands his ground, looking calm as ever while Kane laughs, mocking him for not bringing a weapon. Kane decides to stick with his sword, which makes Belinda lose it, yelling that he's just being a coward. Kane lifts his blade, ready to attack, but the boy just smirks and says he'll have to knock some sense into him. Kane lunges in with strike after strike, but the boy dodges every single one of them. Then, out of nowhere, he lands a crushing blow right into Kane's chest. The hit's so powerful that blood sprays from Kane's mouth and he collapses, shocked and struggling to wrap his head around what just happened. Kane can't believe how his opponent moves with such skill. The crowd starts buzzing, whispering that this young lord might actually take the win. He urges Kane to get back up, saying he hasn't even started yet. Grinding his teeth, Kane makes another attack, but our guy grabs his arm, thinking about how this man used to bow his head without a fight and could never meet his eyes. Raising his sword, the boy strikes hard, landing blow after blow until Kane finally hits the ground. Holding him by the hair, he mocks Kane's family, recalling how Count Logis once helped Perdium when it was on the brink of collapse, all because of his friendship with the boy's father. He remembers Kane arguing against helping a failing land, saying it was like pouring water into a cracked bucket. But despite the protests, the Count stayed loyal, claiming that friendship alone was a good enough reason. With one last push, our hero declares that Kane's lesson is done. Bruised and shaken, Kane admits defeat. The crowd gasps, even the strange guy watching nearby. Then the crowd erupts, celebrating the hero as the victor, while his sister Elena cheers in excitement. The strange man storms over, furious that Kane gave up so easily, but our guy cuts him off. He announces to everyone that this dude will foot the bill for all the meat and drinks at the gathering. Shocked, the man protests, but our protagonist grabs his shoulder tightly and warns him that this is the price of losing. He jacks up the stakes further, demanding 2,000 gold on top of the original bet, and coldly reminds him of the consequences if he tries to bail. The next day, our hero is chilling in his room, staring at a chest of gold and thinking about how it could fund a mercenary company. The cash is huge, but he knows time's ticking and he can't wait around. Elena pops in, asking how he plans to use all that money. Before he can say anything, Belinda teases that it's probably for Lady Amelia's birthday. Elena chimes in that he fought so hard just to buy his fiancé something fancy. That catches him off guard. He's left thinking, wait, I have a fiancé? Dude suddenly pipes up, wait, I had a fiancé? Belinda just rolls her eyes, saying he's only acting clueless because he's embarrassed they peeked into his brain. Elena drops the name, Amelia from Rayford County. That rings a bell. He remembers her as the perfect noble, loved by everyone for being super kind and fair. But the future's got other plans. She's gonna ignite rebellion, earn the title Witch of the North, and team up with Delphine to take down Perdium. Then he shifts gears and asks when his dad's coming back. A week, they say. So he casually says he's heading to Rayford County. Belinda's like, dude, it's not even her birthday yet. He shrugs. He's not going for cake, he's going for cash. Cut to Rayford County. Amelia's out here barefoot, giving her shoes to a kid like it's no big deal. She says if anyone's gonna struggle on her land, it'll be her. Then she orders food and shelter for the poor, and the crowd basically starts worshiping her right then and there. Later in her garden, her aide, Burnif, praises her, saying the people love her now, and it'll help her in the whole succession thing. Instead of getting all mushy, she stomps on his foot and grills him about why he threw that duel. He explains he lost on purpose so no one would notice her too early. She shoots back that she didn't raise him to be weak, then switches to business. He says the merchant squads are really taking advantage of Perdium, grabbing money that was meant for rebuilding after the orc raids and picking up experienced soldiers who are leaving Perdium. Amelia thinks it's a great idea, but warns they need to keep up appearances as regular merchants until she's at full power. Then, news comes in. Young Lord Ghislaine from Perdium just showed up, claiming he wants to chat about the merchant squads. Amelia's annoyed, wondering why this guy is even here. In the reception hall, he greets her all relaxed. She snaps back, saying he barged in without giving a heads up and still hasn't figured out basic manners. He just smirks, saying since her birthday's around the corner, he thought he'd drop off her gift early. He casually mentions that he picked up some flowers from a merchant group earlier, praising their smell and saying he'd buy from them again. She asks for the name, and he remembers it's the Arctium Merchant Guild. She doesn't show much interest, declaring that now that she's received his gift, she'll take off. Before she can get up, he tells her to sit. The tone in his voice catches her off guard. This isn't the shy kid who used to stutter around her. He gets right to it, demanding 10,000 gold. She's stunned and asks if he really showed up out of the blue just to hit her up for that kind of cash, wondering if this is his dad's idea. He shrugs it off, saying his father has nothing to do with this, and besides, she clearly doesn't plan on marrying him anyway. He points to her knight, warning that if she ever wants to rule Rayford, she might pull it off. But if anyone finds out about her secret power building, it could ruin her chances in the brutal succession game. She warns him not to talk so recklessly, but he just smirks, assuring her he'll keep her secret, unless he leaves without a good payday. The tension heats up when Bernaf walks in, greeting the young lord. He knows this guy well, Amelia's loyal knight, a swordsman who could go toe-to-toe with the strongest around. He assesses the situation, and calmly states that if he dies here, war is bound to follow. She coldly replies that it would just be reported as some thug breaking in and getting killed by her knight. With a chilling command, she orders his execution. He narrows his eyes, realizing he has no choice but to get serious now. Even Bernaf shoots our protagonist a fierce glare, but he's on his game, ready for anything. Suddenly, someone lunges at him, aiming straight for his chair. He flips forward, kicks the attacker in the chest, and shoves the chair right back at them. He calls them out for pretending to be polite when they clearly set up an ambush, basically saying House Leipold doesn't know the first thing about honor. The knight fires back, saying he was rude, and their swords clash as he accuses him of showing up uninvited and making their lady uncomfortable. Then he charges at our guy with full force. Our hero dodges swiftly, rolling and flipping until he's back on his feet. The knight's a bit taken aback. He thought Cecil was just some arrogant brat with no real skills, but the kid clearly knows what he's doing. Amelia, losing her patience, tells him to wrap it up already. Cecil throws some sass back, asking if the knight thinks he can boss him around, but the knight isn't bothered. He leans in lower and picks up the pace, forcing our guy to fight with everything he's got. The knight makes a speedy swing with his sword, and our boy barely saves himself by bending back. He glares at him and starts swinging his sword like a maniac. Amelia watches, stunned, realizing that the spoiled heir she knew is actually holding his own against Bernaf. Swords clash fast, screeching against each other. Our dude almost lands a cut, even grabbing at the knight's sleeve, but Bernaf slips away and counters with quick strikes and a brutal kick that sends Cecil sprawling. He jumps back up, ready to attack, but the knight grabs him by the neck and slams him to the ground. Cecil coughs, and the knight comes at him again. Our boy manages to dodge the sword but gets kicked hard. He rolls up and stands back up like a superhero, suddenly realizing the knight's using mana to power through his hits. The knight smirks and says, Cecil's style looks like it's straight out of brawling with barbarians, definitely not any kind of formal training. Sure, that might get you somewhere in chaotic fights, but not against him. Our guy knows this match is way out of his league, but he doesn't have time to back down. All of a sudden, he charges in, unleashing a slick trick that catches Bernaf by surprise. His blade almost comes down on him, and he follows up with a brutal kick to the face. Bernaf stumbles back, bleeding and stunned by what just hit him. Amelia yells for her knight, while our hero dives back in for more. Bernaf blocks the next strike, and dead serious now tells his girl to get out of here because he can't keep her safe if she's close. Our guy can't help but grin. This is the kind of battle he's been itching for. Amelia storms out of the room, fuming. How could Cecil embarrass me like that? Someone must have spilled the beans. No way he figured all that out by himself. She thinks about the rumors, him taking down orcs, saving his sister from an assassin, even beating the heir of House Loges. She always rolled her eyes at those stories, thinking it was just luck or hype, but now she's starting to wonder. The moment she steps outside, her heart drops. All her knights are lying dead, and there's this woman standing there, smiling like it's no big deal. Amelia freezes when she sees who it is. Before she can react, the woman closes in, presses a knife to her throat, and hisses for her to shut up. With a smug grin, she brings up that old spider stunt of Amelia's, how she got her revenge by raising spiders of her own. The woman laughs, saying the whole thing never really suited her, and tells Amelia to do exactly what she says. Meanwhile, Cecil picks up on the shift in mana and locks eyes with a knight who's staring daggers at him. The knight spits that Cecil is a disgrace to nobility and charges him without holding back. Swords clash in quick succession, sparks flying everywhere. Bernaf glares and rushes in fast, striking one after another, but Cecil manages to block just as the blade swishes dangerously close to his neck. The swords clang against each other. He lifts his sword and charges at Bernaf, who claims this is the end for him. Bernaf barely catches Cecil with a strike, leaving a cut on his shoulder shoulder, but Cecil counters just as fiercely, realizing the knight's going all out. The knight taunts him, saying there's a big difference between a real fighter and some spoiled brat playing with swords. Then he kicks Cecil, sending him backward. His attacks are relentless, sharp, and constant, like his blade is glued to Cecil's. Cecil knows he can't win like this, but instead of freaking out, he smirks. Yeah, this is actually kind of fun. He stands his ground, glaring, and suddenly makes a quick move, unleashing his third core. The swords clash, and his energy surges, flipping the fight in an instant. With one clean strike, he knocks the knight's sword away and pins his own blade to the guy's forehead. Amelia starts freaking out and shouts that he can take 10 grand if he just walks away. Cecil, with a chill smile, lowers his sword and tells her she should have gone for it when he asked all nice. She tries to brush it off like it's just a couple arguing, but he's not having any of that. With a casual shrug, he ups the stakes, 20 grand or else. Guards suddenly drop dead, and Burnaf freaks out. He's thinking, Cecile's on a whole different level. He's pumping out mana like a pro knight. Amelia's face scrunches up. She realizes that Cecile just leveled up. The knight says, "Should we tell Duke Delphine?" And she smacks him right across the face. Seriously? If this gets out, the Duke will have our heads. She admits she only teamed up with him without her dad knowing because he promised to fund her secret rebellion against House Perdium if she helped take them down. If anyone finds this out, her own siblings would end her, and if Cecile figures out the link to the Actium company, her whole deal with the Duke will be ruined. Bottom line, Cecile's got to go. Burnaf mentions that Cecile's pretty messed up with a shoulder wound, but warns them they can't involve Leopold Knights without leaving a trace. Amelia snaps back, "That's why I've trained my own crew." Then she pulls out her secret weapon, the Wild Cats, a rowdy bunch of war orphans and misfits loaded up on mana. She orders them to ambush Cecile at the gorge, the only sneaky route between Perdium and Leopold. Her voice drips with venom. "Cecile, you embarrassed me. You're dead." Meanwhile, Cecile's rolling out with his crew, trying to act cool even though he's hurting. Fergus checks in, but Cecile thinks, "I'm fine." Plus, that 20k gold from Amelia is gonna help us rebuild and give us some breathing room. Sure, he'd love to take her out too, but that would spark a war. And House Perdium is already busy dealing with barbarian trouble up north. For now, retreat's the plan. He'll use Amelia's Actium company secret as leverage. Belinda reminds him that she was supposed to grab Amelia as a hostage, but Cecile jumps in and says it was actually Fergus's job. Out of nowhere, his mana kinda glitches out, probably a side effect of that third core he's been messing with. Belinda grabs his hand and fixes it up, even though it hurts like a bitch. He realizes that only someone super strong could manage that. Who is this girl? Just a maid from some small town with that kind of power? It's a weird flex, but he's not complaining. Extra muscle on his side is definitely a win. She promises to stick by him no matter what, then hits him with a question. Why did he ask Amelia for so much cash? He just shrugs. She was basically his only rich option. She's totally thrown that he ditched his engagement for that. But he knows Amelia can't go running to her dad. When she presses him more, he finally spills the beans. He's planning to take back the monster forest. Fergus tries to throw a wrench in his plans, but Cecile switches gears and asks about that dude he told Fergus to track down. Fergus says they found him, but warns he looks half dead. Cecile doesn't care. As long as he's breathing, he'll do. They pull up to a rundown house. Belinda doubts anyone's actually living there, but Fergus insists that's the place. An old frail guy opens the door looking like he's 1 foot in the grave. He barks at them to leave. Belinda whispers that he looks more like a dying geezer than a fighter. Cecile just grins. Finally, the ex-captain of the Ratatosk mercenary group, Jillian. "Our guy's been dying to meet you, old man." Everyone's jaws hit the floor when the boy mentions the Ratatosk mercenary crew. That squad was basically legendary, masters of every weapon and feared by knights everywhere, even though they disbanded ages ago. Their leader? Jillian, of course. The boy steps up, making it clear he's here for business. The atmosphere shifts when this weird presence drifts toward his shoulder, putting everyone on high alert. The old man locks eyes with him, demanding to know what he wants. Belinda tells him to ease up, saying the guy's not in his right mind, but he doesn't budge. Instead, he drops heavy words like eternal punishment and claims he knows how to cure a so-called incurable disease. He lists the symptoms: sky-high fever, coughing up blood, skin breaking out in red petal-shaped marks, basically torturing people endlessly, which is why it's called eternal punishment. The old man freezes, panic all over his face, and yells for his daughter, Rachel. The girl's coughing gets worse, and he thinks to himself that there's still a chance. Back in the day, he had tried to recruit Ghislaine, but by then, the guy was already down and out after losing his daughter. Looking around the rundown house, it's clear he spent everything in search of a cure. All that's left are old weapons. Then the girl cries out, begging to just be allowed to die, and he realizes he can't waste another second. Belinda tries to stop him, saying even the priests call this sickness a curse from God, but he stands firm. He argues that he can save her, hands over a list of herbs, and explains that mercenaries rely on knowledge as much as skill. Eternal punishment might seem untouchable now, but it'll be easy to cure in the future since it's just a simple recipe, though it does need a crazy expensive ingredient, a fairy's blessing. He quickly goes over the recipe, whips up the potion, and hands the bottle to the old man, telling him to give it to his daughter. She drinks it, and everyone's stunned when the red blotches start to fade and her breathing eases up. The old man is shocked, pointing out that even divine power couldn't help. The boy explains that the medicine boosts the body's healing instead of directly attacking the disease, and with some time, she'll be fine. When pushed, he reassures them that she'll be okay in a month or two. Feeling overwhelmed, the old man claims he has nothing left to offer but himself, even suggesting he'd be willing to live as a slave. The boy immediately shuts that idea down and tells him that what he really needs is the warrior who used to lead the Ratatosk mercenaries. The old man peers at him, noticing the determination in his eyes, and then, unexpectedly, he chops off his own hair and tosses it to the ground as a vow. Everyone around is frozen in disbelief. He asks the boy if he has friends or foes, and the answer is both. He's got plenty of grudges now and even more on the way. Just then, an arrow tied to a rope comes flying out from the shadows. The old man catches it mid-air, pulls the attacker in, and demands to know who sent him. The boy mutters that he has a pretty good idea and reaches for his sword, but the old warrior doesn't hesitate. He snaps the enemy's neck right then and there. Belinda watches, stunned, realizing just how dangerous this guy really is, and wondering why the young master would choose him. The old man kneels down and pledges his loyalty, saying his life now belongs to Lord Cecil Perdium. The boy, secretly excited, realizes he just landed one of the most important allies for his mission to rebuild Perdium, and he can't wait to see what they'll achieve together. One of the wildcats rushes in, all panicked, and tells his boss that a scout just got taken out. The leader flips out, yelling how that's even possible when Sir Bernaf promised Cecil couldn't touch their guys. He starts wondering if the scout messed up or if the intel was just bad, then pieces it together. Jillian must have teamed up with Cecil. Grabbing another scout by the throat, he demands answers. The guy swears he saw it go down. The leader lets him go, muttering that Jillian's finally making a move again. Cut to the carriage. Belinda is groaning about the old dude hauling a mountain of weapons, saying he looks like a traveling shopkeeper, especially since they had to rent an extra cart just for his stash. The young master just shrugs, saying they needed the extra space for Rochelle, and those weapons are gonna save their butts later. Behind them, Fergus and Ricardo are riding close by, and he reminds everyone that the real priority is getting through the gorge. Belinda brings up the spy and guesses Lady Amelia sent him. He agrees, and she warns that things could get messy fast. The mask the spy wore marks him as a wildcat trafficker, basically a shadow guild involved in smuggling, hits, drugs, and human trade. They're built differently too, since a lot of them used to be mercenaries. When he asks how she knows all this, she says she picked it up before working at Perdium Castle. She stresses they need to be careful, but he just smirks and says they've got Jillian on their side. The carriage is flying down the path, but suddenly Jillian stiffens. He narrows his eyes and feels something's off, ready for whatever's coming. Out of nowhere, a huge blast goes off, and two scouts jump Jillian. He whips out his sword and starts swinging. Blades are clashing, sparks are flying, and the scouts keep coming at him non-stop. Jillian cracks his neck like it's no big deal, swings hard, and takes one of them down. The carriage is speeding like crazy, then suddenly screeches to a stop. Jillian's like, yep, this is a trap. The horse jerks hard, and boom, more explosions go off one after the other. Scouts surround the whole carriage, and their leader steps out, throwing shade. He calls Jillian the ex-boss of the Ratatosk mercenaries, the coward who ditched everything just for his daughter. Jillian plays it cool, saying he doesn't know what the guy is talking about, but the leader fires back, saying he's just pretending not to recognize him. Then he tells his squad to straight up kill Jillian. Our guy asks if Jillian wants backup, but Jillian smirks, saying he's got this. The scouts rush in, lining up, and Jillian goes full beast mode, slicing through them like it's nothing. One scout jumps at him, and their blades clash, but Jillian cuts him to pieces in an instant. The leader's shocked, realizing the old mercenary strength is still there. So he yells for his crew to split up and hit Jillian from both sides. Instead, Jillian hops on his horse, spins his sword like a blender, and charges right at them. As he gets closer, the spinning blade shreds through scouts like they're nothing. The survivors freak out and yell to aim for the horse. Blades fly, one hits the horse, and Jillian bends low but still takes another scout down. One sneaks up behind him, but he blocks with his shield. It's the leader himself. The leader is furious, saying Jillian ruined his life already, and he's gonna end things right here. Jillian shoves him back, but the horse finally collapses from its wounds, slamming into the dirt. Jillian gets up, whacks the leader with his shield, and says he's not the leader of the Ratatosk mercs anymore. The leader doesn't buy it, screaming that nobody else could be him. Jillian raises his weapon and says his mercenary days are over. He's just Lord Cecil's attendant now. The leader loses it, charges with his weapon, and screams one last word, die. The fight starts with a full-on blast. Jillian and the leader swing with Zero, holding back. The leader slams his sword into Jillian's shield so hard the ground shakes. While pushing harder, he spits the truth straight out. The mercenary band crashed the moment Jillian walked away. His jaw locks, his voice dripping with bitterness, as he admits he had to crawl into dirty jobs just to stay alive. Jillian blocks with his shield and rams forward with everything he's got, but the leader ducks low, stumbles, and still keeps pressing. Jillian sees his own shield starting to split apart, and in that moment the leader rises with fire burning in his eyes. He shouts that he lived for the dream of making Ratatosk the strongest mercenary band, but Jillian threw it away just to act as a puppet for spoiled nobles. His anger explodes as he pulls out 3 daggers, calls Jillian pathetic, and hurls the blades through the air. Jillian swings his sword clean, cutting them down into the dirt with zero effort. The leader doesn't slow down. Sword in hand, he charges forward so fast it's hard to even track his moves. He jumps, slashes, spins, and the clash feels so raw and heavy it's as if steel on steel could rip the world apart. He's sure he has the upper hand now. In his head, he's mocking Jillian for wasting years on a sick daughter while he was grinding power in the underworld. To him, Jillian is washed up, nowhere near the fighter he once admired. The leader flicks nails at him, but Jillian blocks with the shattered remains of his shield. Then the leader rushes in with a dagger, but Jillian catches it with his bare hand and throws it back, asking if revenge really means that much. The leader coats his hand in mana and blocks Jillian's counter with ease, leaving Jillian shocked that his energy can't even break through. With stormlight burning in his eyes, the leader unleashes a blast, but Jillian dodges and fires back with a wave of energy that sends him crashing straight into a tree. Coughing up blood, the leader laughs in a broken way. He tells Jillian this isn't the first time he came for revenge, but last time the man he found wasn't worth killing, just some washed-up weak version of the fighter he once looked up to. Grinding his teeth, he yells, asking where the real Jillian went. Jillian stabs the dagger into the ground, lifts his sword, and says he's got his own reason to fight now. He promises to give his old comrade the respect of a true fallen leader. The leader smirks, grabs another blade, and charges again. Their fight rages like a storm, both going full power, no holding back. Jillian takes a dagger in the side, but pushes through, grabs the leader's shoulder, and slams him with a crushing strike. He raises his axe and calls him by name, Viego Valanos, the 5th unit leader of the Ratatosk mercenary band. Viego is bleeding out, still grinning smug, and Jillian is ready to finish it with one clean swing. That's when Belinda and the young master show up. She's already seeing piles of gold from the loot, while Jillian just shrugs an apology for dragging it on. The young master laughs, saying Jillian's way more badass than he thought. He remembers the wild mercenary tales about Jillian, the ones that made him want to become a merc king, and now he feels lucky to have him on his crew. Jillian says the guy on the ground used to be his comrade. That makes the young master zone out for a sec, thinking about where his old crew ended up, and he tells himself maybe one day he will track them down. For now, he and Belinda are all about grabbing loot, but Jillian cuts in, saying he does not take orders from anyone. 2 days later, they hit Perdium territory. Belinda is hyped when the town shows up, but the young master feels a sting in his chest, remembering how he once thought this land would always be home. Jillian asks if this is really the place, and he nods, saying it is not what it used to be. Jillian tries to stay polite, but the young master calls him out, pointing at the wrecked houses, the empty fields, and how all the strong workers got dragged into the northern wars. Jillian admits he knew about the fighting, but not how bad it wrecked this place. Belinda stays quiet, surprised at how much the young master actually knows until he breaks the silence, saying he is going to fix everything. This fight, he says, is about protecting what he once took for granted. Once Duke Delphine and his crew are gone, the land will thrive again. Belinda perks up, points ahead, and when he follows her gaze, his chest locks up because standing there waiting for him is his father. The councils hold up in Perdium Castle, stressing over what to do. Some are like, we gotta cut troops, but others shoot back, bruh, if we do that, who's holding the borders? Someone suggests hitting up House Leopold for cash, but the Lord drops the bomb. Leopold already dipped on their support, built up their own army, and stacked food like doomsday preppers. Still, he's dead set on rebuilding the garrison by the monster forest, even if it means firing knights to save coins. The heir watches all this and thinks, yes, same old energy. For Cecil, it's been months, but for him, it feels like decades. He used to hate how strict his dad was, but now he sees the weight the old man's been carrying all these years. When the meeting wraps, he finally thanks his father for everything, calling him father for the first time. His dad side-eyes him and asks where he's been. The boy admits he went to Leipold's turf, promising he didn't cause trouble. Albert instantly goes, please don't tell me you gambled again. The boy insists it was business with Amelia. Homer hits him with the classic, remember you're the heir speech, and Randolph basically calls cap on the story about him beating 2 knights, saying he probably just third-partied their fight. The boy doesn't argue, no point flexing now. His father just cares that Elena's safe, and for once he actually praises his son. Feeling bold, the boy asks for a favor. Immediately, Homer and Randolph clown him, saying he probably wants money again and dragging up all his old chaos. Burning gates, melting armor for a legendary sword, eating war horses, the whole list. The boy just shrugs it off and drops his bomb. He wants to reclaim the monster forest. The whole room freezes. Later, he's back in his room, annoyed because his dad said no and everyone else basically roasted him for even suggesting it. Belinda confronts him, calling the idea insane. Jillian explains the forest's rep. It's called the Forest of Death for a reason. No one goes in and comes back out. But the boy's not backing down. He hints at the real prize, a runestone vein hidden inside worth a fortune to mages. In his past life, Duke Delphine found it, but right now, only he knows the secret. Belinda sighs and gives in, while Jillian swears loyalty. The boy tells Belinda to go hire 200 mercenaries. She's like, he is seriously blowing all that money? Jillian warns that mercs are shady and will stab them in the back, but the boy grins and says they'll be picky. His plan? Recruit the most unhinged small band in the north, the Kelvaros mercs. They're basically feral dogs, dangerous even to their bosses, but their skills are unmatched. On the road, he's like, he's got to keep those violent dogs on a leash. Their camp's set up in Zimver, and before they even show up, the mercs already have eyes on them. The guys start laughing, saying the two don't know what's coming. Spotting the fresh outfit on the kid, one merc assumes he's some rich noble, and they're hyped about easy cash. That vibe flips fast when Jillian just grabs one dude's head and crushes it till the guy's screaming. He then chucks the body back at the squad, which instantly pisses everyone off. The mercs circle them, shouting if the old man's gone crazy. One dude steps up, admits the kid's probably noble, but warns he better chill cause in this place he might not walk away in one piece. Before the guy in the bandana can swing, horse hooves echo through the camp. The kid steps forward, tells the merc to shut it, and demands to know who's running this crew. Those guys didn't seem too fond of the way our boy was talking. They claimed the young man had no clue where he was. While spinning his club, the guy with the bandana boasted that he was the one who had kicked all this off. He tossed a weapon toward the kid, saying the young noble should take the blame for everything he'd done. Just when it looked like that weapon was about to nail the kid in the head, Jillian swooped in and caught it midair. There was no way he was letting that happen. His skill left some of the soldiers shocked, and the bandana guy was one of them because the old man managed to jab his sword right through the gaps in the chain, completely stopping the attack. Cecil had already figured they wouldn't be too keen on talking things out. He told Jillian to make sure he didn't kill any of them, and with that order, things started to get really interesting. The first guy who realized he was just a nobody was the one who lunged at our protagonist. Jillian dragged him around like he was nothing, and used the momentum to smash the club into another guy's stomach with killer accuracy. That was all it took for the other soldiers to charge at him, insisting they wouldn't go easy just because he was with a noble. Jillian then showed them just how skilled he really was, tossing one soldier's body into the others like it was nothing. The fight barely kicks off and soldiers are already dropping like flies. Jillian's aura is so intimidating it makes the mercs second-guess themselves. That's when the noble hops off his horse totally over it and demands to see the captain. He's not here to waste time with background characters. Finally, the leader shows up, acting like he just woke up from the best nap ever. The crew immediately straightens up. Clearly, this is their guy. He calls himself Kaor and wants to know what the kid wants. The noble doesn't hesitate. He's here to hire them. Kaor laughs it off, saying no one starts a deal by beating up their men. The noble shrugs and says flexing was his way of showing dominance. Kaor warns him he's about to start a war, but decides to hear him out anyway. Inside the tent, the boy explains he needs backup for a run into the monster forest. The mercs start whispering like, nah, that place is Death Central. When he drops that he's heir to the Perdium family, the entire crew bursts out laughing. No way a kid like him is pulling that off. Kaor calls him weak and tells him to get lost, but the noble claps back, asking if he's scared. Kaor leans back, acting unbothered, saying they only fight for real money. The noble fires back that excuses are for the weak. Now Kaor's annoyed, but still tries to dismiss him, offering safe passage if he just drops some cash for the wounded. The noble's like, no, let's make it interesting. He challenges him to Moriana's approval, a deadly mercenary duel where you're tied together, no mana allowed, and you fight with nothing but daggers. The winner takes control, the loser obeys. The whole camp loses it. Jillian's stunned. How does a noble even know about this? In merc culture, saying no would basically be waving a coward flag. Kaor grins and accepts. The two step into the circle, wrists bound, blades in hand. Kaor yanks hard, flexing his strength, bragging he survived this 5 times. But the noble yanks him right back, calm and steady, then drops the bomb. He's done this not 5 times, not 10, but hundreds. After that quick back and forth, the real fight kicked off. Both of them had to be super careful. One wrong move could mean losing. In their first hit, neither of their daggers found anything to stab. They adjusted their swings, barely missing each other's necks. Even though they were practically standing toe-to-toe, no one landed a hit until Kaor made the first big move, using his strength to spin our guy around and unleash a few more attacks. But Cecil, fueled by that classic hero instinct, managed to block everything, even pulling off a slick dodge. Facing off again, he realized the next hit wouldn't come from Kaor's knife hand. He had to block a wild kick instead. With no magic allowed in the duel, it all came down to pure muscle. Kaor remarked that Cecil was hanging in there, but expressed doubt that he'd really done this type of thing a ton of times, hard to pull off even once in a lifetime. As he attacked, Kaor suggested Cecil needed to sound more convincing. The mercenaries thought the noble was getting pressured by their leader. Jillian was watching, feeling furious, and that made the merc stop cheering instantly. But he also picked up on the truth. Cecil was struggling. The area was too cramped, and without any magic, it was all about physical strength. The size difference made it even tougher for Cecil, who was barely keeping up with Cower's blows. Cower acted like he could do whatever he wanted. Still, the old mercenary had a backup plan. If his master was in danger, he wouldn't hesitate to jump in. Core grabbed Cecil's arm, aiming to slam him down, but the boy managed to leap just in time, landing safely behind his opponent. Before he could capitalize on that moment, he felt a sharp pain in his leg from when he had blocked that first kick. Now, the injuries were stacking up. Cower teased him, asking if his legs were starting to shake, calling his struggle pathetic, but giving him some credit for having guts, though he pointed out that courage has its limits and he thought he'd figured out the boy's strategy. Cecil's doing his best to defend against the knife, using his body to block the lighter hits. The downside? He can feel the damage piling up. He knows his leg is on borrowed time. Kayor, the experienced mercenary, is curious to see how far the kid can push himself, making the whole thing more exciting for him. Kayor's got mad skills with knives and is putting pressure on Cecil without even breaking a sweat. It feels like a miracle that Cecil hasn't been hit yet, despite a few chances to strike back. Then Cecil makes a mistake, reaching out too far and getting close to Kayor's knee. Before he knows it, he's blocking a swing aimed at his face with his leg. He knows he can't take much more. Thor senses it too. He's ready to score a clean hit this time. Jillian thinks he might need to jump in and save the day, but Cecil's got a trick up his sleeve. He dodges the dagger and ends up exactly where he wants to be. Kaor didn't see that dodge coming, and suddenly, Cecil manages his first hit, surprising everyone watching, including the old mercenary. Kaor tries to hit back, but only air meets his knife and he gets cut again. It's hard to believe he got hit by a noble. The soldiers rally behind their leader, trying to pump him up while Jillian watches in shock. Things are falling apart for Kaor as he keeps taking hit after hit. Cecil nails him in the face several times, then switches his grip on the dagger and drives it into Kaor's forearm. Kaor, fueled by rage, swings wildly but nothing lands. He starts thinking Cecil must be cheating since just moments ago he couldn't dodge. Jillian, though, gets it. He realizes that while Kaor's striking hard, it makes his muscles tense up, and that cuts down on flexibility over time. Instead of going head-to-head, Cecil stays flexible and light. Kaor didn't see that strategy coming, and realizing he's got the upper hand now, puts away his axe. The mercenaries are getting desperate, complaining it's not fun anymore. Cecil gives a shout-out to Kaor's determination. Some folks might start using mana when they're losing, but Kaor explains that he earned his leadership through challenges like this, so he won't break the rules. Cecil says that's pretty impressive. Kaor admits he's at a disadvantage in a straight-up fight, but believes there are other ways to win. He gathers all his strength to toss Cecil out of the circle, leveraging his size. Kaor knows he isn't the best fighter, but he thinks this move will secure the win for him. However, even in midair, Cecil pulls off a surprising move, using his tied hands to zip back to the center of the circle, while landing a shot to Kaor's stomach. The bindings actually help him stay in the circle. Now, he's right on top of Kaor and manages to pin one of his arms down, causing the mercenary to hit the ground hard, just outside the circle. Everyone realizes Kaor's basically done for. Still in denial, Kaor asks if he really lost, and Cecil claims victory. Kaor's baffled about how someone so young could be so skilled. Cecil responds that it's time for Kaor to learn some manners because he's just become his master. Then he drags Kaor back into the circle, explaining that Kaor hadn't actually stepped out, so now he's about to teach him a real lesson. He smacked the mercenary right in the face, sending him crashing to the ground again. Kaor tried to argue that the rules said he only loses if he steps outside the circle, but our guy just brushed off his excuse. Sitting on the mercenary, he asked if he really thought he could pull out the rule book in the middle of a fight. The mercenary shot back, questioning if he thought of himself as a noble. Cecil told him not to talk back to his master and hit him in the face again. It turned into a full-on beatdown right there in front of everyone. While the mercenary was taking the hits, his subordinates were left wondering if they should jump in since the challenge was technically over. Kaor was already pleading for it to stop, so our protagonist picked him up again just to remind him that he still hadn't stepped out of the circle. The merc leader clocks what's going on and instantly panics. He yells at his guys to take the noble out right there, but the second Jillian lifts his axe, they freeze. Dude basically says, anyone who gets in my lord's way is speed-running the afterlife. And that alone has these so-called tough guys ready to tap out. Kaor has no way out, so he braces himself for a talk, but instead he just gets wrecked. Fists, not words. The mad dog, once feared by everyone, is now getting folded by some noble brat, and he can't even process how it came to this. His men freak out, thinking their boss might actually die, but then the noble flips the script. Instead of finishing Kaor, he tells them to grab water and bandages if they don't want their leader to bleed out. The mercs hesitate for a second, then actually listen. For the first time, they're following his orders like he's their real commander. Later, at the negotiation tent, Kaur signs the contract without reading it, pride long gone. He mutters something half-mocking, but Cecil makes him say it properly, with respect. Cecil grabs his arm, shocks him, and says from now on they're basically family, and they better do their best together. A few days later, the army reached Perdium territory. The mercs whine about being up too early and joke that since their boss is just some noble heir, they don't need to take things seriously. That's when a mountain of muscle named Gordon steps up. He tells them if they actually want cash, they've got to unite and let him be the rep, of course for a fee. The others grumble but agree, since the logic is solid. Not long after, a lone horse shows up. They assume it's Cecil riding in solo and think, wow, bold move. Gordon tells them to stand tall and scare him a bit, ready to put the brat in his place. But the moment they realize he's rolling with an entire squad behind him, one that includes the infamous Kelvaros, their cockiness dies. The Kelvaros don't take orders from just anyone, and seeing them here changes everything. When Cecil rides up, Gordon stammers out his name. The noble pats his shoulder, says it's a cool name, then drops his own, Cecil Perdium. Calm but confident, he tells them to gather up because they're heading out to conquer the monster forest. For the first time, he's rocking full armor. Dead serious about claiming it, they set up camp like it was the launch of some massive side quest. Supplies stacked, soldiers assigned, everything prepped. Cecil checks in with Belinda for the head count. Turns out they've got 148 mercs under contract, plus 41 Kelvaros guys, making it 192 in total. He's hyped about the numbers. Belinda mentions Scovan, expecting him to back out, but nope, dude's secretly helping them keep things quiet. Cecil knows the odds are on his side. He gathers the squad and lays it out straight. They're going into the monster forest and they're gonna own it. Everyone knows the stories, creatures out of nightmares, death waiting behind every tree. Some of the mercs start sweating, but Cecil flips it on them, promising triple pay if they stick it out. Fear instantly turns into hype. Belinda drags him later, saying they're basically broke already, but he just smirks. If they win, money won't even be a problem. When he asks if she still believes in him, she admits she doesn't really have a choice. Marching starts. Trees come down, roots get dug up, and Cecil's not just standing around, he's swinging an axe alongside the mercs. Some whisper that he's just flexing, but Belinda shuts that gossip down fast. When she asks why he's working, he says the obvious. The faster the path clears, the faster they're out. She notices he knows this forest a little too well. Meanwhile, Kaur cracks a jealous joke about Cecil having someone who actually cares, and Jillian casually shuts him up with a tree trunk bump. Time passes. Lanterns glow, the forest gets darker, and still nothing happens. Some mercs start saying the rumors were cap, just spooky stories. Then Gordon points out something insane. The path they cleared earlier? Gone. Like the forest just healed itself. Cecil calls everyone to battle stations. Swords come out, but the silence is deafening. He orders Gordon to back up slowly, step by step. The guy tries, but trips like a clown and face plants. Everyone tenses, waiting for something to happen. A bald merc laughs it off, saying Cecil's just a scared kid trying to control them. But mid-sentence, something grabs him by the waist and drags him off into the dark. No sound, no warning. The squad freezes. Nobody even sees what hit him. Cecil, though, knows exactly what's out there. Direst Ents. Monsters that can snatch your life in the blink of an eye. In that forest, all sorts of creepy creatures started showing up. The mercenaries were totally freaked out and ran for their lives, terrified of getting eaten alive. The monsters happily took advantage of the chaos and began their feast. A few soldiers got caught and looked like they were about to have dinner. These creatures had an insatiable hunger, and our protagonist's army was taking a hit. Gordon was gripping a tree for dear life, not wanting to be the next meal. While he yelled for help, some of his buddies tried to chop at the vines holding him. One swing was super strong, but it did nothing. Actually, it broke the axe. Realizing that approach wasn't going to cut it, Gordon got pulled by one of the monsters. But just before it could devour him, he sprang into action and cut the vine holding his subordinate. Cecil showed off his skills by landing a hit on the creature's eye, which made it thrash around in pain. The mercenaries noticed their employer had actually wounded one of the monsters. Cecil then rallied everyone, shouting for them to get it together. If they spread out in that forest, they'd be easy pickings. They needed to stick close and protect themselves with their shields until they got the next order. Everyone seemed to get it and formed a tight shield wall since nobody wanted to end up dead there. Cecil went off to grab the oil lanterns, telling them they needed to light them up and hurl them at the monsters. Finally, it made sense why they'd brought so many lanterns. One soldier pointed out that the monsters were getting closer, and Cecil yelled for everyone to throw the lanterns. This was their shot, and they threw them like he said. The fire flew towards the creatures, but at the last minute, the monsters used their vines to smash the lanterns. Kaur was shocked. They had blocked everything. There was no way they could set the monsters on fire like that. With that, the monsters launched their next attack. But then Jillian showed up with a powerful axe. defending the men with his skills. Belinda was right there with everyone else, showing off her dagger skills by landing a hit on one of the creature's eyes. Cecil told them to keep protecting the others while he prepped to throw more lanterns. Our boy charged at the monster with his sword. Belinda was worried sick about him, wishing he'd be more careful. He was holding his own and dodging like a pro, but the monster was just waiting for him to slip up. After dodging all those attacks, he got closer and closer to the terrifying creature. The soldiers realized those monsters had feet, so they definitely weren't just trees. Cecil nearly got crushed, but he managed to slice the creature's leg and then stabbed it right in the eye. The monster howled in pain, and that's when they noticed the boy was getting surrounded. Belinda shouted that it was time to start throwing the lanterns because this plan was actually going to work. With the monsters focused on the boy, they couldn't block the lanterns, and soon enough, fires were spreading everywhere. Some mercenaries were amazed, not expecting to actually fight those things. It gave them a boost of courage. Gordon figured those creatures didn't stand a chance against fire, but Cecil warned them not to get too comfortable. The real fight was just getting started. They were about to see the monster's true forms. A big cloud of smoke rose up and the guys were confused, wondering if the fire went out. Belinda and Jillian rushed to our protagonist to protect him. The woman wanted to know what's up with those monsters. Cecil explained their outer layer was weak to fire, but their flesh wasn't. That smoke was from the fire reacting with their insides. As the smoke cleared, they could see a thick shell underneath. The monsters were showing their true selves and charging right for the army. Some soldiers were freaking out, thinking they'd already won. Then they saw the boy raise his sword and tell everyone to listen up. It was time to lift their weapons because the battle had turned into close combat, and he was the first one to charge into the fray. The soldiers just stand there, frozen, while the young noble sprints straight into the chaos like he's got nothing to lose. Most of them can't even process the idea of fighting those monsters. They're sure it's game over if they try. Kyor's mercs, on the other hand, dive right in, almost excited for the action they've been waiting for. Belinda takes off after the young master to keep him from doing something reckless, and Jillian snaps at the rest, telling them to quit stalling and get moving. Orders are orders, and hesitating here is basically signing your death note. Even though half of them are shaking in their boots, they've got no way out but forward. Now that the monster's shield is gone, Cecil hypes up his crew, telling them to strike fast and finish it clean. He's out front himself, tearing through the creatures like they're nothing, proving that fear isn't an option. Watching him fight gives the men some guts, and slowly they start believing maybe they can actually pull this off. After a brutal fight, the last monster drops. The soldiers can hardly believe they survived, but Cecil doesn't let them stand around. He gets them back in line instantly. He reminds them this was just the tutorial level. The real nightmare hasn't even started yet. His confidence starts to click with the mercs, and they begin to actually trust his lead. Pushing deeper into the cursed forest, they hack through trees and beasts alike. But the deeper they go, the worse the monsters get. The men can't shake the feeling that this hellish grind has no finish line. Some mercs had nerves of steel, but Jillian and Kyor were on a whole different level. When a giant beast started toppling over after losing its leg, Jillian literally tanked it with his shield so no one got crushed, and the young master swooped in to finish the kill. Afterward, he checked if anyone was hurt, but everyone was fine. The crew started catching on that if they wanted to survive, sticking close to him was their best bet. Jillian noticed the squad was finally syncing up, and Kyor just shrugged, saying, "Experience is the best teacher." Still, not everyone was buying in. One merc was losing his mind, convinced the forest had everyone acting crazy. Later that night, under the moonlight, they stumbled on a big lake and the mercs rushed in to drink, ignoring Belinda's "be careful" warning. Cecil called it. They'd camp there before crossing in the morning. Around the campfire, things got messy. One guy tried to rally others to ditch the mission, saying life's worth more than coin and accusing the young master of being just another noble using them as pawns. Some almost bought it, until they noticed the truth right in front of them. The reckless noble was patching up their wounds with medicine worth more than their paychecks, making sure each one knew how to recover properly. That kind of care didn't scream meat shield. The doubter stormed off, pissed no one sided with him. Later, Cecil pulled Jillian and Kyor aside. Kyor was ready to rip the coward's tongue out, but Cecil had bigger worries. Their lanterns kept going missing, only 24 left now. The weird part? Monsters had been relentless before, but the last 2 nights were way too quiet. Jillian put it together. They'd wandered into a predator's turf, one that only hunts at night. Cecil agreed, and suddenly the silence felt heavier than any battle. The mercs tried to sleep, but everyone knew they'd just stepped into the real danger zone. Gordon is knocked out cold when he suddenly feels this weird glow creeping up to his face. He cracks his eyes open and freaks out. It's one of their lanterns floating in the air. His heart nearly drops because, lanterns don't float. Then he senses something brushing his neck and totally loses it, thrashing his weapon around and yelling about a monster. Everyone else bolts awake, but to them he just looks like a guy tripping over a nightmare. Before they can brush it off, another merc says he felt something too, and right then, a lantern blinks out of existence. One by one, more people admit they feel this icy chill, like something's watching them. The bandana guy doesn't sugarcoat it, something's definitely stalking the camp. That's when the young master pulls up with his commanders, no hesitation, and calls everyone to arms. Inside a cabin, Cecil breaks it down. They're surrounded by shadow abominations, beasts that literally become the night. You can't see them, you can't stab them, and they hunt in packs. The mercs panic, but Cecil's got a counter. Light is their weakness, and the scrolls Belinda prepared are their trump card. The strategy is clean. Shields hold the line, archers keep distance, and the strike squad, led by the young master, sweeps in once the shadows are forced into physical form. Belinda stresses they're already losing lanterns fast, but Cecil warns that rushing would only make things worse. So the troops rip their scrolls in unison, and boom, pure light explodes through the camp. The darkness cracks and nightmare creatures crawl out of the shadows, finally visible. Shields lock tight, arrows rain down, and the strike team waits for the call. The young master raises his voice, giving the order. Fear flips into fire, and the mercs charge together, ready to turn this midnight horror into their first big win. Before they started wiping out those creatures, our main guy was already a swordmaster, eagerly taking them down. Even though those beasts could hide in the shadows, they were pretty weak when it came to a fight. His crew was quick to eliminate them, and he ordered them to take out as many as they could as fast as possible. Jillian was great at drawing the enemy's fire, taking all the hits while Kaur used that chance to create distractions and take out a bunch of those monsters. At one point, he found himself nearly surrounded, but luckily he wasn't alone. Belinda provided cover for her teammates, helping them out. After a solid attack, she called for the young master, who also jumped in to slice through the monsters with his mana-charged sword. Those creatures weren't much of a threat. They'd become a real force for House Perdium. The magic glow lit up the battlefield, while the soldiers with bows took advantage of the chaos to land more hits. They were well within the protagonist's strategy. The monsters weren't really able to do much against that crew. Meanwhile, the archers were running low on arrows and starting to panic because the assault group hadn't reached them yet. They held their ground as best as they could, but eventually the creatures made it to the shield barrier. Just when it looked bleak, the assault group showed up, continuing to wipe out the remaining monsters. Cecil praised his mercenaries for their solid work. Those holding the shields felt a relief wash over them, realizing they weren't just seen as tools by the noble. The new plan was to surround the rest of the creatures and strike even harder. Soon enough, the monsters started retreating from the humans. Seeing them run away, our main guy's army stood their ground. Cecil noticed the beasts were trying to avoid getting surrounded, smart enough to understand their dire situation. He asked Belinda to pinpoint the lead creature, the one with the horn on its head signaling the others to flee. The assault group was still hot on the monsters' tails. Cecil knew they wouldn't stop. If these creatures got away now, they'd come back to wreak havoc later. He needed to wrap this up quickly, and that meant taking down the leader no matter what. Belinda was getting more impressed with the boy. He really had changed a lot in the past few months. After using her ability, she was ready to locate the horned creature among the rest. She threw her hook up to snag a tree branch and launched herself into the air for a better view. Spotting the horned beast didn't take long, and once she did, she got ready to capture it. She looped her hook around its neck and immediately let the young master know, who then charged in to break through the monster's formation. All he needed to do now was finish off that beast. With a powerful charge, Cecil covered several meters in no time, smashing right through the monster. Finally, that nightmare was over. The young warrior swings his blade one last time, slicing the monster apart like it's a broken puzzle. With their boss gone, the rest of the creatures freeze up, totally lost. He doesn't waste the moment, tells his squad to keep pushing, and suddenly the fight feels way easier. The mercs are heated, running on pure rage for all the times these things jumped them from the shadows. Kaur hypes up his crew, making sure they don't slack behind the old vet, and the battle stretches on until the sun finally cuts through the forest. When the last beast drops, it's like the whole camp breathes again. The night felt endless, but now victory feels unreal. Still gives props to the squad, and the vibe instantly shifts. They're hyped, proud, and way more confident than before. Belinda checks if her boy's still in one piece, and Jillian throws him a compliment on his skills, which he actually returns back. Then it's cleanup time. They drag monster corpses around the camp, which looks weird, until Cecil explains the smell keeps weaker beasts away. Jillian backs him up, saying it'll make camp safer. Though Kerr can't resist picking a fight because he still has beef with the merc. It's been 10 days in this cursed forest, and while most of the big threats are gone, the road to the mine isn't cleared yet. Belinda reports Kaur's squad didn't lose a single man, but the hired helps numbers are down to 126. 3 guys are missing and no bodies were found. Everyone already suspects the coward ditched them, totally in character for him. Meanwhile, the deserters think they're safe, but the silence is too clean. One guy says they gotta run faster, but the others stop dead staring behind him. He turns around and boom, two massive glowing eyes lock onto him. The coward instantly realizes he didn't escape death at all. He just ran straight into it. That beast had made its nest right in the middle of those shiny minerals, stacking human bones like trophies, and that's where she dropped the last body she managed to drag back. Her eyes are cold and dangerous, the kind you don't live to describe. Morning hits, and the mercs are already chopping trees and clearing paths without anyone yelling orders. Cower notices they're moving like a well-oiled squad, not a ragtag bunch. Jillian cracks a joke about one guy who just won't shut up, but otherwise everyone's locked in. When Cower asks if the young master plans to cut them loose after this mission, he straight up says no. He's keeping them as his own soldiers. And honestly, it makes sense. These men aren't just regular mercenaries anymore. The forest has leveled them up into something way tougher. By now, the fallen monsters are stacked around camp, and Jillian gets props for his hustle. Cower can't help but admit the young master reads this forest better than anyone. No major monsters have popped up yet, but he knows the real nightmare is still waiting. Then Belinda rushes in, buzzing with news. The boy doesn't waste a second. Orders fly, the men move faster, and finally they break through. The second the ore glitters in the light, everyone just stops, stunned. The rumor was real. A massive stash of runestones sits right in front of them. Cecil says this is why they came, and the crew can hardly believe their eyes. Even Belinda hugs the boy, asking how he pulled off knowing all this. While Jillian tells Cower to start trusting the plan, the vibe shifts fast when a figure rises out of the stones, claiming none of them are leaving alive. It's that cowardly merc, but before anyone can react, he collapses dead on the spot. His buddies try to run to him, but the boy cuts them off with his blade, warning them to stay back. With one clean slash, he clears the mist, and what it reveals kills the mood instantly. A mountain of bones and half-rotten corpses. The mercs freeze, realizing this isn't just monster territory. Humans died here too, and whatever caused it isn't done yet. Everyone was eager to hear what the young master would say, and it hit them all at once that getting to that ore wouldn't be a walk in the park. Turning to his crew, he said they needed to get ready. That's when a giant serpent made its entrance, and its mouth was nothing short of terrifying. Thinking it was about to strike, Cecil shouted for his men to scatter. He wasted no time jumping into action, sword in hand, ready to risk it all. Showing off some serious skills, he dodged its attack and managed to land a hit on the top of its head. Climbing onto the beast, he set up for a precise thrust aimed at piercing its skull. But those scales were tougher than he expected. Gilliam was shocked that his attack loaded with mana didn't work. Cower could tell those scales were something else. Now Cecil had to get away from the creature fast. While he was still in midair, the serpent spat venom at him, making his stomach drop. The venom hit his cloak as he fell, and he quickly saw the creature's tail coming straight for him. He had to think fast to avoid a nasty end. He blocked the attack with his sword, but the creature's strength sent him crashing hard into the ground. Belinda nearly freaked out, worried about the young master's safety. After hitting him, the serpent started slithering around, and the mercenaries had to be on high alert. If they got caught under that massive body, they could be crushed without even knowing it. Gilliam and the others managed to save some soldiers from being trampled just in time. As Cecil staggered up from a heap of bones, the cries of despair grew louder. Nothing was managing to take down the beast. It all clicked into place. A serpent was the ruler of that mine. The blood python, a seriously powerful creature. It was supposed to be deep in the woods. The odds weren't in their favor. Running away was still an option, but as he gripped one of the rune stones, Cecil knew he couldn't waste any more time. Giving up now would mean all his hard work was for nothing. That serpent had to go. He wasn't about to lose everything he'd fought for. To take down that monster, he had to tap into all his power and started releasing energy from his third core. Cecil was determined to clear the way. The creature tried to hit him right away, but he dodged it with his sword. This time, his blade was way more powerful than before, and he cut through its scales. He even got a shot in one of its eyes. The monster wasn't caught off guard, though. It swung its tail at him from behind, but our hero managed to block it. He realized his physical strength was still lacking to handle such a heavy hit. Even with one of its eyes gone, the serpent was still vicious and angry. It showed off its skills by using its tail like a sword. Cecil understood that some fights just can't be avoided. Even if the odds were stacked against him, he felt responsible for everyone around him. He couldn't let his choices put those who helped him in danger. Now was the time for him to step up, just like his dad did for their land. He poured a lot of energy into the fight, but the creature kept coming at him. Even seriously hurt, it showed no sign of weakening. With every second, he felt his third core draining and things were getting riskier. He could run out of mana before finishing off that monster. Belinda rushed back to him looking worried. While she checked him for any injuries, Gillian and Cower jumped in to protect him. One of them told Cecil he needed to get to a safer spot while they held back the creature. The mercenaries were all in for that plan, but Cecil wanted them to get away first, which confused everyone. Jillian refused to follow that order. Cecil knew he was powerful, but couldn't guarantee safety for everyone, and he didn't want to risk losing them all. Belinda asked what he planned to do about himself, and he said he'd try to keep the creature occupied. She knew he had pulled off miracle after miracle, but she still couldn't see why he pushed himself so hard. As everyone was sidetracked talking, the giant creature shot venom at them once again. Cecil shouted for everyone to get out of there as it was getting too dangerous. But the mercenaries didn't listen. They quickly formed a shield to protect him from the venom. He wasn't expecting that, and those guys told him they wanted to fight by his side. They had never worked for someone like him, who had saved each of them multiple times in just a few days. Cower was eager to go after the treasure, while Belinda insisted she wouldn't leave him behind. Jillian said he'd create a distraction. Everyone had faith in him, hoping this would help Cecil learn to trust others too. Cecil found it hard to accept help when he was used to always being the one to lend a hand. This enemy was bigger than anything they had faced so far. Its scales resisted mana attacks, and it could spit deadly venom. Every move it made was lethal. Belinda was increasingly worried about Cecil. He pointed out that the creature was missing an eye and had a big wound on its side. Those were its weak spots. Holding his sword high, he rallied his crew, saying they'd fight together now. That motivated the mercenaries like nothing else, and they were ready for anything. As the fearsome creature charged at them, the mercenaries stood their ground. A fierce battle erupted. Cower managed to strike one of the creature's wounds, and as he plunged his blade in, the serpent writhed in pain. It was Jillian's turn to go in, smashing the monster with his axes. That created a great opportunity for Cecil, who rushed toward the creature's one remaining eye. He landed a blow on another weak spot with his powerful sword. Even though he had insight into the future, he knew that didn't guarantee everything would go his way. Still, he could plan to overcome challenges. If he did nothing about that serpent, many lives could be lost, and that was something he wouldn't allow. He was the only one who knew how the future of their territory would look if he failed. So, he lunged at the creature's mouth and got swallowed whole. For a moment, everyone panicked, but soon after, his blade burst through the serpent's scales. Inside, he shredded it apart, creating a massive wound in its head. He came out covered in venom, but his men were right there, ready to back him up. At the castle, everyone's losing it. A guy slams the table, raging that the young master went into the monster forest like it was no big deal. Albert's convinced the kid's way too stubborn, acting like he can pull off what no one else ever could. The superintendent points out it's already been 2 weeks, so they should just face reality. Some blame Scoven for feeding them fake info and ruining any chance of a rescue, while others can't figure out why that knight even went along with such a reckless plan. They all agree that if the boy somehow comes back, he's gonna have to answer for it. But while they're arguing, his dad notices something they don't. Randolph bursts in, telling the Lord to come outside right away. And there he is, Cecil, alive, looking sharp, and casually walking back toward the castle like he just came back from a stroll. The boy is in his dad's office, surrounded by advisors who all look ready to tear him apart. They demand to know why he stormed into the monster forest without permission. His dad calls him reckless. Albert waves around a letter from Count Leipold accusing him of blackmailing his own fiancée for 20,000 gold coins, and everyone starts branding him a criminal. He doesn't back down. Instead, he promises to cover the money and calls Belinda in. She drops a chest on the table, and when it opens, the whole room freezes. The glow of pure runestones fills the air. He explains that these came straight out of the monster forest, and that there are wagons loaded with more outside. The same people who called him a fool now realize he just flipped the entire situation. What looked like a disaster is actually a jackpot that could fund the territory for years. He lays down his terms. His men Ricardo and Scoven walk free. The forest stays locked off from regular citizens, and he gets command over the troops and mercenaries. Some advisors panic, thinking he's asking for unchecked power, but he makes it clear. This is the price of him stepping in as their financial backer now that Leipold bailed. Without his conditions, they get nothing. The mercenaries back him up, reporting like loyal soldiers, and it's obvious he already has his own army. His father, caught between anger and pride, lets it slide this time. He warns his son that next time there will be consequences, but admits he sees the northern wolf in him, the same unbreakable will their family is known for. The mercenaries are ready to rest, but the boy announces he's heading out again immediately. Everyone tells him to chill after surviving the serpent, but before he can take another step, exhaustion wins. He collapses, completely drained after pulling off the impossible. While the shady nobles are scheming, a pigeon drops off some bad news. The monster forest's already getting conquered. The Duke's like, time to start a war with Perdium, and Edgicard's down to jump in. The order's simple. Wipe that family off the map. Harold Desmond, the guy running the meeting, asks about spies. One noble says he's got 2 vassals still planted in Perdium. Harold tells him to move them into Digald and casually drops that Victor will be the one to kick things off. Everyone freezes. Victor's basically House Desmond's secret nuke. Some try to argue it's too risky to play their biggest card so soon, but Harold shuts them down. If the Duke says it, it's happening. Time to prep for war. Meanwhile, Amelia is losing it. She's fuming that the boy snatched up a runestone mine using her money. Her assassins flopped, her dad cut off support, and yet he's still winning. She feels clowned on. Her knight waits like, just say the word, he'll do anything. She pulls herself together and lays out the plan. The stones are fresh, not sold yet, and there's only one real buyer in the north, the Scarlet Magic Tower. She wants her killers to hit the trade route, mess up the delivery, and steal the goods. When her knight reminds her about another tower in Brabant, she laughs it off. That tower's washed. The boy's greedy, so he'll go where the gold is, and this time she's ready to wreck him. Back in his room, the young master's healing up from the serpent fight. He remembers being swallowed, choking on venom and forcing his mana core to burn it away. Most people would have died instantly, but he flipped the script, turning the poison into pure energy. Basically, he leveled up in the most insane way possible. When he wakes, he feels crazy different. Faster recovery, bigger mana reserves, and the venom literally changed his power. It's wild, even compared to his past life. He's hyped to test it out, but priorities first, sell the stones before word spreads too far. His sister's been watching over him and hugs him the second he sits up, relieved he's alive after being out for 2 days. He's frustrated about the lost time, but she doesn't care. She just wants him safe. Then their father walks in with his people, sees his son alive, and after some small talk, drops the bomb. He's got a favor to ask. Our protagonist went to the training hall with his dad, and this was a first for them. Never had they been alone there before. In his past life, Cecil wasn't really into spending time with his father, often steering clear of him to avoid dealing with any of it. His dad felt bad for asking him to do this right after he'd just woken up, but our protagonist was cool with it since he'd slept for 2 whole days. Curious about what his dad wanted to ask, he noticed his father hesitating and looking away. This got him thinking about what his mom once said about his dad, not being great with words. She had mentioned that his father always wanted to be the strong one for everyone, putting others first without being honest about his feelings. The only time she really saw him open up was when he confessed his love to her. So she had told her son to be patient with his dad because expressing emotions wasn't his strong suit. Then the Lord asked our protagonist to draw his sword, which made the boy feel a bit tense about what was coming. Still, he decided to go along with it, and they jumped into a sparring match. His dad was amazing with a sword, and the boy, with years of experience as a mercenary, held his own. The fight felt like a solid training session until they both paused to catch their breath. The boy realized his dad's strikes were pretty heavy and noticed a different fencing style that he hadn't seen before. Clearly, his father had the strength to fend off barbarians near the border, while still knowing how to be gentle with everyone. Our protagonist figured he'd throw in some of his own moves. His dad was taken aback by the maneuver, but managed to block it without missing a beat. They were both set to go on the attack again, but before they could, the match ended up in a draw. They had both come really close to hitting vital spots. The Lord complimented the boy, saying he'd really improved his swordsmanship. Cecil takes the compliment, but his dad isn't done yet. The Lord tells him to loosen up when he fights. Drop the stiff shoulders, stop forcing it, and quit being so predictable. Cecil thinks about it and realizes he's right. Everything he knows comes straight from real battles. No training, no lessons, just pure instinct. For the first time, someone's actually pointing out the cracks in his style, and weirdly enough, it feels good. But his dad flips it. This isn't just advice, it's a warning. He says rules still matter. Winning doesn't mean you can just ignore them, because that's how chaos starts. Cecil gets it, but he can tell his father sees something different in him now, like he's aiming for something way beyond their reach. Before leaving, the Lord tells him to stay on that path and to remember his house and his people when the day comes for him to lead. Just as he's about to walk out, Cecil blurts out that he has a favor to ask. His father pauses, sighs, and, ironically, asks him for money. Back in the Monster Forest camp, Cecil's crew is already waiting. They greet him with respect, and he checks in to make sure they're holding up. With his inner circle, Kaor, Jillian, and Belinda, he apologizes for making them wait. He asks Kaor about his daughter, who's walking again thanks to Cecil's help, and the old mercenary is so grateful he can barely put it into words. Then Cecil drops the heavy truth. Perdium is in serious danger. He tells them about the attempt on his sister's life, the spies hiding in their lands, and how the enemy is just waiting for the perfect excuse to start a war. Now that the treasure's been discovered, there's no reason for them to wait any longer. Jillian points out that with weak defenses and money problems, their territory might as well have a giant target on it. Belinda says they should report it, but Cecil shuts that down. If even his sister's guards betrayed her, then spies are everywhere. They can't risk telling the wrong people. Silence hits the tent until his crew steps up. Kaor says he'll stick around because life with Cecil is never boring. Jillian swears his loyalty again, and Belinda declares she's the one who'll protect him best. Their trust lights a fire in him. He knows their real enemies are Duke Delphine, Count Desmond, and his ex-fiancée Amelia, and he's not letting them win. Their next move is the Red Magic Tower. Belinda thinks the Scarlet Tower would pay more, but Cecil wants fewer headaches, and the Red Tower needs a big win to get back its clout. Jillian warns that hauling treasure will put a target on their backs. Belinda points out the risk of ambush, but Cecil isn't just after money. There's someone in that land he needs to find, a girl obsessed with magic, and he won't leave without her. Cecil and the crew roll into Brevant territory, and the first thing that hits them is the Flame Magic Tower. This thing is massive. Like, it goes so high you'd break your neck trying to see the top. Gordon's jaw drops. The man with the eye patch says he has only ever heard about this place, and everyone immediately notices how different life is here compared to old Perdium. Fancy buildings, shiny carriages, mages casually flexing spells just to fix the roads. The mercs stare too long and the mages hit invisibility. Poof, gone in broad daylight. Cecil explains the obvious. These people don't vibe with outsiders. Kaur calls them all idiots for acting surprised. Belinda's impressed anyway, saying even if this tower got knocked down from its peak, it's still insane. Jillian tells her Brevant is basically money central in the kingdom. Cecil, though, knows the truth. This big shiny tower is destined to fall apart one day. When they finally hit the gates, Kaur complains he still can't see the top. Belinda notices armor pieces just lying around, and before anyone can ask, mages on the wall raise their hands and boom. The armors stand up with axes ready. The mages announce nobody's walking in unless they prove who they are. Jillian steps up, introduces Cecil as Perdium's young lord, and says they've got goods. The mages laugh in his face, call Perdium a beggar land, say their goods are probably trash monster parts or weak potions, then basically tell them to bounce. Belinda's heated, yelling for them to come down and say it to her face. Cecil doesn't bother yelling back. He just flashes a runestone in his hand. The mages freeze, realize the carts behind them are loaded with more of those stones, and the vibe shifts instantly. Cecil smirks, asking if they're still not interested. Next thing, Cecil and Belinda are inside the tower with the trade officer Sylvain and that rude mage, both bowing like their lives depend on it. Sylvain apologizes 1,000 times, introduces himself, and promises to handle the deal. Cecil says fine, but he wants to meet the tower master directly. Sylvain's shocked but agrees, sending a guard to escort them. Belinda throws shade, saying this is how they should have been treated from the start. The rude mage just swallows it. As they walk through the tower, a loud boom shakes the hall. Cecil asks what's up, but their guide shrugs, saying it's just research. Across the corridor, smoke pours out of a lab, and a girl's on the ground while some smug third circle mage, Alfoy, tells her she's useless and doesn't belong in the lab since she can't even cast. His crew laughs, saying she should be grateful for free housing. The girl snaps back that she's still a mage and has the right to train, but Alfoy just grins, summons fire in his hand, and tells her to block it if she's really a mage. He launches the spell. She panics, screams defense. Nothing happens. She covers her face, expecting to get roasted. But Cecil steps in out of nowhere, slices the fire apart, and asks if this is what counts as research in the Flame Tower. Everyone's stunned. Meanwhile, in the council chamber, Tower Master Hubert is losing it. They're running out of runestones. Crimson Tower is already pulling ahead, and his own elders are roasting him for wasting money on noble parties instead of supply lines. Someone drops the bomb that Crimson's master hid in the 7th circle, while Hubert's still stuck at 6. He's fuming, promising he'll catch up if he can just get more stones. But Sylvain blurts out the news. A massive shipment of runestones just showed up. The entire room goes dead silent as Hubert's eyes go wide. The scene shifts and Alfoy starts spamming more attacks at Cecil, but our boy blocks everything with his sword with 0 effort. Alfoy then charges up a massive fireball and launches it straight at him, but Cecil cuts the fire clean in half with one swing. Alfoy's squad and the girl freeze in shock because no one thought that was even possible. Alfoy himself is shaken, staring at Cecil in disbelief. Before he can react, a rope suddenly whips around his body and locks him down. Belinda is the one holding it, and she yanks him to his knees, telling him he's got guts for trying to attack her master. Alfoy is stunned hearing her call Cecil that. He demands to know who they really are, but before Belinda can answer, a voice cuts in telling everyone to stop. The one stepping in is Hubert, and he demands an explanation about what's going on. Vanessa freezes up the second she spots Hubert, and nervously calls him Tower Master. Cecil tells Belinda to drop Alfoy, and the maid lets the dude go. Alfoy runs crying to his teacher, whining that Cecil and Belinda barged in like intruders. He says he only tried to keep Vanessa out of the lab since she's got no mana and might get hurt. Belinda clowns him for bawling like a kid, and he snaps back that he's a man. Vanessa, all shaky, admits she just wanted to use the lab. Cecil puts 2 and 2 together and realizes she's the one he's been looking for, the girl who will later be called the Red Nightmare. It throws him off to see her so soft and nervous before she becomes infamous. Hubert, pissed that his student was attacked, pulls out fire magic and threatens to roast Cecil alive. Belinda freaks a little. asking what they should do, but Cecil stays cool, introduces himself as the Perdium heir, and says he came to sell runestones. They head outside, and everyone's jaws drop at the sight of over 10 carts packed with stones. Hubert keeps his poker face, but inside he's losing it, already dreaming about crushing the Crimson Tower. Still, he plays it off, saying the quality looks trash. Kaur bristles, ready to fight, while Vanessa blurts out that even one cart would last weeks. Hubert shuts her down, furious she spoke at all, and curses the guy who stuck him with her. Catching Hubert's vibe, the elders pile on, calling the stones low quality, or maybe even fake. Belinda fires back, but they wave her off. Cecil shrugs and says fine, if they don't want to buy, they'll sell elsewhere. Hubert panics and suddenly switches up, acting generous, offering to take it all off their hands. Cheap. Cecil grins and drops the twist. They're only selling one cart. Everyone's shook and Kaur plays along, pretending it was a mix-up. Hubert pushes to buy everything, but Cecil drops his real plan. If they sell here for double, they can sell the rest to Crimson Tower for triple. Hubert's forced to fold and agrees to pay triple just to lock it down. He's burning inside at getting finessed by some country kid, but with the shortage, he's stuck. As he moves to grab the money, Cecil stops him and says the deal isn't done. With a straight face, he lays down his last demand. Vanessa has to come with him. Hubert's jaw basically drops when Cecil says he wants the girl. Then Cecil just shrugs and admits he's planning to make her his personal mage. Flashback kicks in. Cecil's older now, chilling by a campfire, casually roasting meat on his sword. His buddy with a hook hand cracks a joke about being useless since he's missing an arm. But Cecil balls up his fist like he's about to swing, and the guy instantly backs off. To change the vibe, the buddy asks if he's ever heard of Vanessa, the Red Nightmare. Cecil hasn't, so the dude drops the story. She literally burned down the entire north of Luthania. Even crazier, she didn't even follow the normal mage path. Instead, she leveled up using mana cultivation, which is something only warriors usually do. She's basically a wildfire in human form, and nobles can't sleep knowing she exists. Turns out all those dangerous missions they got earlier were actually about her. Cecil isn't scared. He thinks it's hype that she reached the 7th circle in such a wild way, and with a grin, he tells his homie Claude they should recruit her. Claude's like, bro, are you serious? But Cecil's dead set. When he finally finds her, she's already breaking apart, her magic going out of control. But even then, he sees insane potential. He promises himself that next time she's joining him. Back in the present, Jillian's confused why his master hypes a girl who looks so weak, and Kaur's on the same page. Belinda just asks Cecil to at least give her a warning before he brings new people in. The Red Hat Elder says this is the perfect chance to ditch Vanessa, while the Yellow Hat Elder reminds everyone they've already done their part by watching over her. Hubert steps in, though, and calls her a treasure the tower actually respects, saying she'd definitely join if asked. Cecil listens, then casually drops his demands. He wants a squad of 3rd Circle battle mages in Perdium. He's willing to pay triple the market price, and he wants Vanessa as his exclusive mage. Everyone freezes. Then Renato blows up, mana blasting so hard the windows shatter. He calls Cecil insane for dragging tower mages into territorial wars. Hubert's furious too, saying Cecil's basically trying to use the tower's core strength on the front lines. The tension is so heavy it feels like the room might snap, but Cecil stays calm. He flips the script, revealing Perdium found a massive runestone vein, way bigger than the sample they'd seen before, and the news is already spreading across the north. He says they're not out here picking a fight, they're just trying to survive, and he promises the Flame Tower exclusive rights if they back Perdium. The offer's way too good. Grinding his teeth, Hubert finally shakes his hand. Later, he pulls Alfoy aside. The kid complains, asking why he's the one being sent, but Hubert hypes him up as the tower's future master. He just has to keep an eye on Cecil, make sure no shady business goes down, and dip if a real war breaks out. Flattered but annoyed, Alfoy agrees. When he finally gets to Perdium, though, he's disgusted. The place looks poor, the castle's outdated, and he feels way too important to be stuck in this dump. Cecil greets him politely and warns that the land will test him harder than he thinks. Alfoy, already salty, just swears that once he becomes Tower Master, he's gonna make Cecil pay. Cecil asks where Vanessa is, and Alfoy points behind him. There she is, barefoot, sweaty, and struggling under heavy bags. Cecil tells her to drop them and come with him, but Alfoy butts in, saying she should stick to chores since she's useless without magic. Cecil just yeets a box into his face, drops him flat, and says she's not tower property anymore. She's his. Alfoy blows up, bragging that he and his squad could torch the whole place in seconds. Cecil snaps his fingers, and out of nowhere mercs pop up with blades to the mages' throats. He reminds Alfoy that he's locked in a 1-year contract, and if he screws it up, the Flame Tower loses everything. Alfoy gulps, realizing he's stuck, but his pride only burns harder when Cecil calls him nothing more than a mana battery. Kaur and Jillian close in with creepy grins, saying they'll help him adjust. Shaking with rage, Alfoy spits more insults, but Cecil doesn't even look at him. He walks over to Vanessa instead, telling her she only answers to him now. She's his exclusive mage. She bows her head and admits she can't even use magic, but he just smiles and says he'll make sure she can. Cecil takes Vanessa to his training room and straight up asks how far she's gotten with magic. She admits she's nailed the theory all the way up to the 5th circle, which is actually insane, but she shrugs it off like it's worthless since she can't feel mana at all. She says she worked and studied her whole life, hoping one day it would click, but the more she learned, the more she realized that day was never coming. She grips her staff tight and admits the tower dropped her after her teacher died, the only person who actually believed in her. Cecil knows hitting 5th circle theory puts her on par with some tower elders, and it blows his mind how much pain and effort she must have pushed through to get there. He also remembers in his past life she actually went even further, reaching the 7th circle after picking up a wild mana cultivation method that nearly destroyed her. Smiling at the memory, he decides to flip her fate this time and tells her he's going to teach her that method himself. She's stunned. Cultivation's risky. If it goes wrong, she could end up a cripple forever. But when she sees the fire in his eyes, she realizes he's dead serious. She decides to go for it. They sit down, she loosens her dress to expose her back, and he places his hand on her skin, pushing his mana inside her. The heat is overwhelming and she clenches her teeth, but he calmly tells her to breathe, to focus, to feel the flow. Slowly, she tunes in. The mana spreads through her whole body, and suddenly her energy explodes out, glowing brighter than ever. Her mind drifts back to her past. She sees herself as a kid, overhearing Hubert tell her master that no matter how smart she is, she's useless if she can't use magic. She remembers crying, apologizing, thinking she was the reason her master had to leave. But then his voice echoes, he never left her. He promised he was going out into the world to find a way for her to use magic. He told her darkness never lasts forever, and one day, light would come. Those words hit her now. In her vision, she sees Cecil's hand reaching out, blazing like the light her master promised. She grabs it, their hands shine together, and she finally gets it. Her master was right. The light really did come for her. The moment sinks in, her body gives out, and she collapses, unconscious but finally at peace. Next scene cuts to a building where a massive dude is throwing hands with a squad of soldiers. 4 are already down and the crowd is hyped watching him. The guy taunts the rest, asking if they really think some piece of metal can cut him down. One soldier snaps back, telling him to quit being dumb, then rushes in. Before the blade even touches him, the big guy snatches his arm and slams him straight to the ground. Another soldier tries to sneak from behind, but the man senses it and grabs the first soldier he dropped, using him as a weapon to smash the one charging in. Both soldiers go flying, crash through the wall, and land outside. The man stands tall, telling them he has not even started yet. The fight isn't even heated yet, but a bunch of guys are already laid out on the ground. His crew hypes him up, clowning the losers for crashing their vibe and bragging that nobody around here can touch them. Across the room, some dude slams his cup down, clearly not amused. Cut to him chilling by the river, helmet off, fishing rod in the water like he's got all the time in the world. Someone walks up, tries making small talk about his training, but he shuts that down quickly and tells them to just spit it out. They drop the news. Count Desmond just put out a mobilization order. He instantly gets up, throws on his helmet, grabs his rod, and heads back inside. Telling the guy to follow, he walks into the bar, where the mercs from earlier are now just bodies on the floor. With a smirk, he says the timing's perfect because honestly, he was dying of boredom anyway. Zivalter's in his office with Randolph when he opens a letter, and his hands start shaking. Count de Garde is calling Cecil a murderer and swearing revenge. Zivalter doesn't waste a second. He tells the knight captain to rally the soldiers because this basically means war. The council starts losing it. Randolph says the de Gardes have lost their minds, another guy calls the excuse total BS, and everyone is shocked that a family they treated like brothers just flipped on them. Cecil cuts through the noise and says it's because of the runestone. The vassals who went to de Garde land must have spilled the secret. Everyone stares at him like he's crazy, but Zivalter knows his son already saw this coming. Randolph tries to hype everyone up, saying their troops are stronger anyway. Right before Scoven bursts in yelling that the de Gardes are literally outside the gates already. When they rush out, they see it. 6,000 soldiers rolling up with flags flying, plus 1,000 more in the supply unit, and siege weapons being set up like they've been planning this forever. Randolph's freaking out. Albert can't believe they're this loaded, and Zivalter shuts them all up. He orders everyone behind the walls, closes the gates, and declares that war has already started. Then Count Thamos de Garde rides up with Victor, acting smug. He calls his dead son useless in life, but useful in death, and even drools over Perdium's castle. He demands surrender, pretending he's just a grieving dad. Randolph rages, Albert tells Zivalter not to bother, and Cecil just watches quietly. Zivalter finally unleashes his mana like a thunderclap and tells Thamos that Cecil didn't kill anyone. The message is clear: get lost or die. Even Victor admits the old man still has that general aura. Thamos recovers and throws a parting threat before leaving. Back inside, the war council goes off again. Randolph wants to charge out, Homern calls him insane, Albert warns one bad loss ends them, and others argue about asking for help. Zivalter looks lost in the chaos until Cecil speaks up. He says straight, they only have 2,000 soldiers against 7,000. A head-on fight is suicide. The enemy will attack in about 15 days once the siege engines are ready, so their only play is a defensive stand while calling for reinforcements. Zivalter doubts it, but Cecil whispers something in his ear that leaves him stunned. Next scene, Cecil's suited up in armor, helmet under his arm, ready to flip the board. He gathers Belinda, Jillian, and Kaur and lays it out. They're going to ambush the supply units. If the enemy can't get resources, the whole war slows down. Kaur says the troops are already hidden in the forest. Jillian says the ponchos are ready for stealth, but Belinda points out they don't even know where the supply unit is. Cecil looks straight at her and says that's her mission. She hesitates but accepts. He knows it's dangerous, but he trusts her. And as a final trump card, he plans to unleash Vanessa when the moment comes. Cut to the Degard supply camp. Pavro, the traitor who used to serve Perdium, is drinking and bragging that he's about to score land thanks to siding with Count Desmond. He clinks glasses, laughing that Perdium is finished. But outside, Cecil and his squad are already in position, cloaked in the storm. The night is dark, the air is heavy, and Cecil lowers his helmet. Mana lights up his blade as he gives the order. No prisoners. Wipe them out. Cecil and his squad rush the supply unit soldiers. The enemy scrambled to their feet, but Kaur and our boy ripped through the first ones they reached. Jillian stormed in with his giant axe and started mowing people down. The soldiers froze in shock at the ambush, wondering what the sentries had been doing for this to happen. Before they could regroup, Cecil and Jillian tore them apart. Our boy told his mercenaries to follow the plan and not spare a single soul. Meanwhile, on the other side of camp, someone ran to Baron Pavro telling him to get out fast because they were under attack. Pavro snapped back, saying he could see the chaos himself. He demanded to know what the sentries were doing and told the man to stop panicking, reminding him that they had 1,000 soldiers on their side. The messenger pulls up looking pale, blurting out that 70% of their squad is already wiped. Cecil, Kaur, and Jillian basically turned the supply unit into a slaughterhouse. Pavro freezes, then panics, saying they need to dip before they all get clapped. He barely gets the words out when, bam, a dagger sinks into his throat. He hits the ground, lifts his head, and sees Belinda standing there with ice-cold eyes. Meanwhile, Cecil and his crew torch the camp and erase every soldier. Belinda drags Pavro in front of her boss, forces him on his knees, and spills the tea. The guy sold them out to Count Degard and even switched sides to lead the supply unit. Pavro starts groveling hard, swearing he surrenders, and rats out Count Desmond as the one pulling the strings. Cecil just listens, unfazed, because he already figured Desmond was behind it all. Pavro keeps begging, reminding Cecil he served Perdium forever, promising loyalty again, even suggesting they could ransom him for big money. For a second, he thinks he's safe when Cecil gets off his horse and tells him to lift his head. But before he can finish his thanks, Cecil slices his head clean off. He says flat out that Perdium doesn't cut deals with traitors. Anyone who attacks them only earns death. His mercs stare as he climbs back on his horse, face cold and scary. Belinda gets low-key worried seeing him like that, but Kaur breaks the tension and asks what the move is. Cecil says they're heading straight to the castle. Since the enemy's focused there, he plans to mess them up by hitting from the back. On the way, he lays it out. Belinda and Kaur hit the left, he'll take the right, and Jillian's in charge of the main force. It's basically thousands versus a handful, but Jillian just smirks and says he's got it. Kaur laughs, saying Jillian scored the fun job, while Belinda asks who's going to handle the castle gate. Cecil shuts it down fast, telling them to leave the gate alone. Everyone's shook. Our boy turned around and told them this war is going to be the turning point that flips the history of Perdium forever. Scene cuts to the battlefield, and Perdium is covered in dust and smoke. Zivalter orders his soldiers to get ready for the enemy attack. Right as he says that, a massive boulder smashes into the castle and tears down part of the wall. The knight captain shouts for his men to fire arrows and stop the enemy from reaching the wall. But it is too late. Degard's soldiers are already climbing up. They spill onto the walls and start cutting down Perdium's men. Zivalter instantly commands his forces to switch to close combat and hold the walls at any cost. Count Degard is grinning while watching his troops wreck Perdium. He says this is satisfying and declares the war has already won. He calls for the catapult unit to prepare for another strike and says they need to take the castle fast. Victor is stunned. He cannot believe this is how the Northern Wolf ends. He expected Zivalter to put up more of a fight. At the wall, a huge man charges straight at Zivalter. The Count blocks the attack and cuts him down in one clean strike. Then Degard's soldiers surround him with Randolph and the knight captain. Randolph says the castle gate is about to break down any minute and asks what they should do. Zivalter tells him to forget the gate and focus on defending the walls. Randolph spins on Scoven, demanding answers about backup. Scoven drops the bad news. Every territory they begged for help straight up ghosted them. Svalter and Randolph claimed they were busy with their own drama, and the messengers sent to Logis. Gone. Vanished. Randolph can't believe it and just snaps, calling them all ungrateful. Over at Degard's camp, a soldier sprints in, panicked. Their supply unit got hit, and the guy sent out for more hasn't come back. Thamos freaks out, but the Count tries to play it cool, saying there's no way Perdium could have known where to strike. Then Victor spots smoke rising in the distance and realizes Perdium actually pulled a smart move. He gets hyped, like he's been waiting for a real challenge. Thamos asks what they're supposed to do now that they're basically broke on supplies. Victor just smirks, taps the Count on the cheek, and says they don't need any. Today, they're taking the castle. The Count looks stunned, but Victor's already sizing up the fight. The walls are still holding because Perdium's elites and the Northern Wolf are grinding it out, but the gate? Wide open. He lifts his sword, points straight at it, and orders the army forward, swearing they'll tear Perdium's walls down before the day's over. Victor hopped on his horse and called out for Adon. A dude in strange armor with a massive sword and shield rode up on his horse. Victor told him straight up that he was going to lead the charge himself to break the castle gate and ordered Adon to stay behind and guard the base. Then Victor took off with his squad while Adon turned back to hold the camp. On the castle walls, enemy soldiers were climbing up, but Svalter and his knights cut them down as soon as they showed their heads. In the middle of the fight, Skoven noticed something and told his master to look ahead. Svalter raised his eyes and froze when he saw siege towers rolling straight toward them. He had no clue how the enemy figured out the perfect height of their walls. Randolph pointed out that they were already swamped with enemies, and if those towers reached the walls, they were finished. Svalter yelled at his men, asking if the catapults were ready. They said they had just finished setting them up. He ordered them to fire right away and stop the towers before they got close. A huge boulder flew out and headed straight for one of the towers. The enemy was shocked that Perdium had whipped up a catapult that fast. But before the boulder hit, Victor grabbed a spear, charged it with mana, and threw it. The spear smashed the boulder in the air. Everyone on the battlefield stopped in shock. Svalter and his knights couldn't believe their eyes. The Count looked down and saw Victor riding straight at the castle. That was when he realized who had intercepted the shot. Victor pulled out his sword and shouted to Perdium's soldiers that fighting was useless. He told them their fate was sealed, and nothing they did would change it. Then he raised his sword and ordered his men to hit the castle gate with the siege ram. While they charged the gate, the troops on the siege towers reached the walls and stormed Svalter and his knights. As the ram slammed into the castle gate, Svalter's mind slipped for a moment. He wondered where his son was. At the castle gate, Alfoy and the other mages are tied up inside a magic circle with soldiers pointing blades at them. Vanessa stands with Fergus, who tells them to sit tight because he's just following orders. Alfoy flips out, calling the soldiers peasants and yelling that mages shouldn't even be part of this war. He rants that the castle is already finished since the siege ram made it to the gate. Vanessa stays chill and says Cecil will come through, but that only sets Alfoy off more. He snaps that Cecil's a lunatic and mocks her for blindly following him. Vanessa doesn't flinch. She tells him straight up that Cecil isn't crazy. Flashback to a few days earlier, Vanessa struggles to use magic and barely manages a weak spark. She apologizes for being useless, but Cecil just smiles and tells her it's fine. He explains that mana builds up with time and what matters is that she can use magic at all. Then he takes her outside, where she sees Alfoy and the other mages digging and burying runestones under Mercenary's watch. Alfoy tries to complain, but Gordon nearly chokes him out to shut him up. Vanessa looks to Cecil for answers, and he calmly explains the plan. The gate will fall no matter what, but if they set things up right, they can flip the battle with overwhelming numbers. When Vanessa asks if he really thinks she can help, he tells her with full confidence that he knows she can. Back to the present. Remembering those words, Vanessa slams her staff down on the circle, and a massive wave of energy bursts out. Alfoy finally realizes the circle is for mana transfer, and Vanessa grips her staff tighter, channeling everything she's got. Meanwhile, the siege ram keeps smashing the gate, and the soldiers grit their teeth, waiting for the signal. Up on the wall, Randolph spots a squad charging toward the castle. Svalter takes one look and instantly knows it's Cecil's people. He spotted his son charging forward with his squad, while Victor kept his eyes locked on the gate. Suddenly, a soldier ran up and said he had urgent news. He told Victor that an unknown cavalry unit was ambushing from both sides at the rear. Cecil and his mercs were slicing through everyone in their way. Our boy swung his sword once and shredded the soldiers attacking him. The enemy froze in shock when they realized they were the ones getting ambushed. They had heard no backup was coming to Perdium, and now they had no clue what was going on. Archers tried to take Cecil down fast by firing at him, but he did not flinch. He charged at them head-on. As he closed in, his horse leaped high. The soldiers stared in disbelief as Cecil flew through the air and crashed into their formation. The second he landed, he cut them apart with one brutal strike, leaving no chance for anyone to react. The rest of the soldiers were terrified. They whispered to themselves, wondering if they were staring at a monster after seeing how many were wiped out in one swing. Cecil lifted his sword, pulled off his helmet, and shouted for Perdium's soldiers to rise. He declared that their counterattack starts now. Cecil and his troops rushed at the enemy, while Belinda and Kaur flanked them from the left. Cecil came in from the right, with Victor right in the middle. Over at the Dygald main camp, Jillian and his crew were taking out soldiers left and right. He called out to Gordon and the guy with the eye patch, Torin, telling them he'd distract the enemy while they spread out to take out their key facilities. The two guys were on board, and Torin couldn't help but grin as he watched the enemy start to panic. Gordon chimed in, saying their base would be in ruins by the time they got back. Count Dygald was totally confused, not getting why they were the ones getting ambushed. A soldier shoved him, insisting he needed to get out now. But just as the Count was about to make a run for it, Jillian charged at him, declaring he'd take him hostage. The Count freaked out when he saw Jillian coming at him with that massive axe. Before Jillian could reach him, someone swung a weapon at him from the side. But Jillian was quick enough to sense it and blocked the attack with his axe. He got hit by Adon, which knocked him back, and Thamos ended up on the ground. Jillian could see that this guy was tough. Adon, acting all tough, told our guy he had guts for attacking the main base with such a small crew. He introduced himself as Adon Praso and asked Jillian for his name. In a real badass move, Jillian raised his axe and said he had no name, just a tool for his master. Over at the left fortress wall, Belinda was busy tying up some soldiers with a rope and tossing them to Kaur, who had a big grin on his face as he ripped them apart. Belinda was annoyed and told him to stop getting blood everywhere. Kaur called her an old lady and said she should handle it herself, which just made her madder. On the right side of the castle walls, Cecil was slicing through enemies like it was nothing. They started to freak out and run, knowing they'd be toast if Cecil got too close. Our guy told his soldiers to charge full throttle while the enemies were confused, saying it was their shot to really take them down. The mercenaries felt pumped seeing how their master was dealing with the enemies, all fired up to crush them. One of the higher-ups called the fleeing soldiers a bunch of unorganized amateurs, telling his guys to block the front with their spears. They quickly raised their weapons, but when Cecil's horse dodged them, they were shocked to find no one was on it. Out of nowhere, Cecil landed on one of their necks, locking the guy down, then used him to turn and take out everyone around him. He finished off the soldier with a clean beheading. Looking ahead, he saw a bunch of soldiers down and others crowded around the tower. Cecil realized the castle wall was in worse shape than he thought, likely because of the siege tower. He figured it might collapse before the enemies broke through the gate, and even though his cavalry was holding them off, their numbers were still overwhelming. He knew they'd get surrounded if things didn't change fast. Just then, a captain yelled for his soldiers to attack, saying the castle walls were about to fall with the siege tower in play, and told them to keep Cecil busy. Our guy figured out he didn't have much time left, so he raised his sword and said they needed to lock in their win before they lost momentum. Cecil took out the first soldier who got too close to him by splitting his head. Another soldier charged at him, and he quickly ended that one by slicing off his neck. Then he handled the next guy by cutting his throat. When a soldier tried to attack him, he blocked it and then tore the guy's chest apart. The soldiers up on the siege tower noticed all this and started shooting arrows at him because they knew they had to keep him away since he was aiming for the tower. Cecil dodged the arrows and rushed towards the captain. He stabbed the captain in the stomach and lifted him up with his sword, then hurled both the captain's body and his sword at the tower. His sword lodged itself in the tower while the captain's body plummeted. Cecil connected his mana thread to the sword and pulled himself toward the tower. Once he reached his sword, he yanked it out and landed inside the tower. The soldiers in the tower were freaked out to see him. Cecil slammed his sword down into the ground, driving it into the tower and dragging it down to the earth. The enemy soldiers couldn't believe their eyes at what he had just done to their tower. Victor was in shock that our guy had dismantled the whole thing with just his bare hands. Realizing Cecil was the commander of the cavalry unit, he turned to a soldier and asked if the main gate was still holding up. The soldier explained that the gate's defenses were tougher than they thought, and they were delayed by some internal fighting. He said they should be able to break through in about 10 minutes. Victor pushed for 5, saying he'd take out Cecil, and told the soldier to have the gate open by the time he got back, looking pretty intense. He warned the soldier that if he messed up, he'd have to deal with him. The soldier got nervous and agreed. Just as Victor was about to move out, someone called him a flying tin can and said he wasn't going anywhere. Victor turned around and asked who the guy was. Kaur introduced himself as the commander of the Kelvaros mercenaries, and with a grin invited Victor to have some fun. Kaur charged at Victor, asking him to play. Victor tapped his horse, making it kick Kaur's horse in the neck, which threw him off balance. Before Kaur could recover, Victor swung his sword at him. Kaur dodged, but his horse ended up getting its head cut off. He came at Victor from above, swinging his sword, but Victor easily blocked it. Kaur gritted his teeth and went for another swing with more power, but Victor was still unfazed. Kaur couldn't believe it. He didn't expect Victor to be able to deflect his attacks. Victor then shifted his sword, making Kaur stumble. He told Kaur he'd seen tons of people like him, just mediocre mercenaries relying on brute strength. Right after that, he swung his sword at Kaur again. Kaur managed to block this heavy hit but was pushed back and struggled to stand firm. Victor smashed Kaur's sword, leaving a cut on his shoulder. Looking at him fiercely, Victor said that dealing with beasts that just swing wildly was the easiest thing ever. Kaur quickly fell back, pressing his hand on his shoulder to slow the bleeding, realizing Victor was as strong as Cecil had said. Then the scene shifts to the past, where Cecil fills Kaur in on Victor being Count Desmond's hidden ace. Kaur asked if Victor was stronger than him, and Cecil said Victor was stronger than anyone he'd ever faced, except for Kaur himself. He explained that Victor would use his advantage in numbers to make everyone focus on defending the walls. While they're busy with the walls, Victor planned to crash through the weakened gate and go all out. Cecil wanted this to happen, but warned that the plan could go south if Victor got out of the castle. He urged Kaur to hold Victor down. Kaur smiled and got to his feet, recalling what his master had said. He thought their boy was asking for too much. On the other side of the battlefield, Jillian was going head-to-head with Adon, who was using his shield to block Jillian's strikes. Count Digald called out to his knight, but a soldier held him back, warning him to be careful. Meanwhile, Toran, Gordon, and the other mercenaries were taking on the soldiers behind Jillian, doing their best to clear a path for him. Jillian was getting frustrated with Adon constantly blocking his hits. He didn't want to waste any more time on this night. He noticed that Adon's shield could handle blows from all directions, and he realized he couldn't break through it. As he thought about the last time he faced someone this tough, he swung his axe at Adon with a lot of force, saying he couldn't waste any more time. Adon managed to block the strike with his shield, telling Jillian he wouldn't be able to smash it. Then he pushed Jillian's axe aside and lunged at him with his big sword, but Jillian deflected it with the handle of his axe. Adon then turned his sword and sliced off Jillian's horse's head, totally catching Jillian off guard. As his horse fell, Adon raised his shield, saying it was time to fall back. He channeled his energy into the shield and pushed Jillian away. Jillian blocked the attack with his axe, but in the meantime, the enemy was battering down the gate with their siege ram, and eventually, they smashed it. Zevalter and his soldiers were shocked by this, but our boy stayed calm. Alfoy shouted to Vanessa to do something since she siphoned their mana, but Vanessa said it wasn't the right moment yet. Victor raised his sword, commanding his soldiers to storm the castle. The soldiers charged in, and Victor told a soldier nearby to fetch Count Digald, claiming he was about to take out the enemy commanders. The soldier nodded and ran off. Kaur, barely holding it together with injuries all over, got up and told Victor he wasn't going anywhere. Victor asked Kaur if he didn't know when to make a run for it as a mercenary leader, and demanded to know why he was so eager to fight him again. On the other side, Aiden faced Jillian and pointed out that their gate was down. He told Jillian he had lost, admitting it was a surprise that they had launched such a bold attack. Adon concluded that the biggest mistake Jillian made was loading the strike team with nothing but mercenaries. He told Jillian that no matter how good a mercenary is, they can't take down a trained knight. At the same time, Victor told Kaur to act like a mercenary if that's what he is, and to know when to bail if it's not worth it. Victor and Adon told Kaur and Jillian that there's nothing in this war worth throwing their lives away for. Kaur laughed at what Victor said and asked if it really mattered. He grinned and mentioned that mercenaries and knights don't really mean much on the battlefield. Jillian chimed in with Adon, saying what really counted was winning or losing. Right after that, Jillian jumped up and charged at the guy, and Kaur went after Victor. Adon raised his sword and told Jillian he didn't want to hear any loser excuses. Jillian blocked his attack and pushed his axe against Adon's sword, using it to pull him off his horse. Adon was caught off guard by that move. Jillian quickly yanked out his axe and swung at the knight. Adon managed to block it with his shield, but Jillian's axe ended up hitting his horse's neck, sending Adon crashing to the ground. He looked up and called Jillian a wretched mercenary. Jillian jumped and swung again, but Adon was quick with his shield. While he was on top of the knight, Jillian told him that even the strongest defense has its weak spots. Then he pulled out a sword and revealed to Adon that he had already pledged his life to Cecil, ready to serve as a weapon. He lifted his sword and said he'd only bring victory to his master. Just like that, he stabbed Adon in the head. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battlefield, Kaur was racing toward Victor. He knew Victor was way stronger, and facing him could get him killed, but he charged anyway because Cecil asked him to hold Victor down. Kaur figured he could slow Victor down if he landed just one hit. He remembered asking Cecil how he planned to handle things, and Kaur wanted to know what that meant. He then asked Cecil to show him the moves he used in their duel. Cecil, looking a bit embarrassed, agreed to teach him some techniques. Our boy grinned at this, explaining that it wasn't just about the moves. Anyone who came at him would probably underestimate him. Kaur charged at Victor with his sword, but Victor just called him an animal for charging mindlessly. He blocked Kaur's attack and swung at him, but Kaur dodged and launched his broken sword at Victor with a ton of force. Victor deflected it easily, telling Kaur that guys like him just act in desperation and might not realize they're making a fatal mistake. As Victor attacked, Kaur remembered what our boy had told him. To land a good hit, he needed to hide his true intentions when close to his opponent. With that in mind, Kaur managed to dodge Victor's blade, although he still got a cut on his shoulder. Grabbing Victor's arm to propel himself up, Kaur snatched his broken sword back. Surprised by Kaur's quick move, Victor barely dodged the next attack, but Kaur ended up stabbing Victor's horse instead. The horse cried out and collapsed, and Kaur fell too, but Victor managed to jump off in time. He hadn't expected Kaur to come back with that kind of move, realizing that Kaur had thrown his sword to turn the fight around. Victor figured that only someone ready to face death could pull off a trick like that. He told Kaur he wasn't as thoughtless as he thought, walking closer and saying how it wasn't unusual for someone to surpass their limits when their life was on the line. He then raised his sword, asking Kaur if he had any last words. Kaur just smiled and said he managed to land a hit, which surprised Victor. Before he could respond, someone flung daggers at him, forcing him to back off. It was Belinda, their favorite maid, who jumped in, tossing a rope with a hook to grab Kaur's jacket. She landed on a horse and dragged Kaur along with her. Victor didn't chase after them. He was more concerned about Kaur's earlier comment. He realized he'd lost his horse because of Kaur's attack, but he could have still taken him out if Belinda hadn't intervened. Victor figured Kaur wasn't foolish enough to risk his life just for a horse. Looking at his fallen horse, he turned to see his soldiers rushing toward the castle. In the chaos, he caught sight of Vanessa gathering mana and quickly grasped that Kaur's plan was to keep him occupied while she prepared her magic. Vanessa remembered that our boy had told her that they could flip the situation in their favor, even if the enemy got right inside the castle gate. Vanessa asked Cecil if he really believed she could pull it off. Cecil smiled and confidently told her he was sure she could. When Vanessa remembered this, she unleashed her magic, and a bright blue light lit up the soldier's eyes. She activated a spell called Flame Strike, and a massive burst of fire erupted, destroying the castle wall and spilling out. The fire consumed everything in its path, leaving Zivalter and his crew stunned by the sheer scale of the attack. Cecil and everyone on the battlefield could see the overwhelming flames. Soldiers were burned alive, screaming in agony. The soldiers outside started to flee, but before they could escape, Cecil charged in, cutting them down and ordering his mercenaries to seal off the castle gate to prevent any enemies from getting away. Victor managed to survive the flames thanks to his armor. A soldier ran up to him carrying a shield and told Victor that most of the troops had been scorched to death and that they needed to retreat. Frustrated, Victor replied that this was frustrating. This war had been carefully planned for ages. They thought they had blocked every escape route for Perdium, but Victor realized they hadn't anticipated the special forces, including a wild card and a powerful mage capable of wiping out thousands in an instant. It was all way too convenient to be a coincidence, and he recognized he was walking right into Cecil's trap. He ordered the soldier to gather the remaining troops, explaining that they'd make a temporary retreat and regroup at the main camp if they could escape the fire. Victor knew it would take longer to capture Perdium than they had thought. He told the soldier to call Adon right away. Just then, he spotted Jillian approaching him, holding Aiden's helmet looking serious. Jillian asked if Victor was in charge of the Diggold army. Victor was too shocked by the sight of Aiden's helmet to answer. Jillian tossed the helmet to the ground and told Victor that his main force was finished. Pointing his axe at him, he demanded Victor surrender. Victor unleashed his mana and told Jillian not to make him laugh. He raised his sword, challenging Jillian and insisting that the war wasn't over yet. He charged his sword with mana, declaring that it had just begun. While the enemy soldiers were scrambling to escape, Zivalter shouted to his guys to start firing. He said they had the upper hand since the enemy was trapped. On the ground, Cecil was rallying his mercenaries, insisting they couldn't let anyone get away. He told them this was their chance to turn the tide of the war, and they shouldn't hold back. As his mercenaries tore through the enemy ranks, Belinda ran up to her master to check on him, asking if he was hurt. He reassured her he was fine and asked about her and Kaur. She glanced over to Kaur, who gave a thumbs up to show he was okay. Seeing that made him smile. Belinda noted that it could have gone south if the fire had started a bit later, and admitted she thought his plan was a bit nuts at first. Cecil shrugged, saying it all worked out in the end. Belinda then said she hoped he wouldn't ask them to do such a risky move again, especially since they'd used up all their mind runestones in one go. Looking around, Cecil asked where Jillian was, which took Belinda by surprise. He quickly rode past her, ignoring her calls. On the opposite end of the battlefield, Jillian was fending off Victor's attacks with his axe. Victor kept coming at him hard, and Jillian was taken aback by how powerful his strikes were. Victor didn't give him a moment to breathe, relentlessly attacking and forcing Jillian back. Impressed by Victor's relentless momentum, Jillian swung his axe when Victor got within range, but Victor jumped to dodge it and managed to destroy Jillian's arm plate, landing a hit on his shoulder. Jillian hadn't seen that coming. Victor's speed and strength were insane. Overwhelmed by Victor's aggression, he got called a disgusting mercenary, with Victor saying he'd take a mile if given an inch. When Jillian swung back with his axe, he tried to push Victor's sword down, but the knight pushed back, surprising Jillian as he maneuvered his sword into the axe's path. Victor then disarmed Jillian, sending the axe flying. He raised his sword, telling Jillian he'd crossed a line, and then stabbed him. Blood gushed from Jillian, who spat more in shock. Victor was surprised to see that Jillian had quickly twisted to avoid a worse hit. He realized Jillian must have had some skill to take down Adon, and said it was a dumb move to face him after using all his strength against Adon. Victor figured Adon wouldn't have been too mad about getting taken out by someone like Jillian, but now it was Jillian's turn to die. Right then, a sword was hurled at Victor from behind. He sensed it coming, swiftly pulling out his own sword to create some distance from Jillian. He turned to confront the attacker, and it was Cecil, leaving Victor in shock. Our boy picked up Jillian's axe effortlessly and rested it on his shoulder. Victor recognized the black armor of the mercenary leader and braced himself as Cecil released his core energy and charged at him. He closed the gap between him and the knight, swinging the axe down from above. Victor managed to block it, but he could feel just how strong the kid really was. Quick on his feet, he pushed him back and swung his sword. Cecil used the axe to block again, then countered with a swipe at Victor's leg. Victor jumped out of the way just in time and came down hard on Cecil from above. Our boy used the axe handle to guard against the attack and then launched himself up, wrapping his legs around Victor's neck to bring him crashing down. Victor scrambled, back to his feet, panting as he realized he couldn't predict Cecil's moves at all. It hit him that one wrong move could mean his end. He couldn't believe there was someone so powerful hiding in Perdium. Cecil casually mentioned he knew about Victor's war power, strategy, and the secret faction backing him. With an intense look, he revealed he knew everything. Victor wondered if this whole war was just a setup. Charging at Cecil, he dismissed this as nonsense. As they clashed, Victor thought it was crazy that Perdium could have figured out their top secret project. He blocked Cecil's powerful strike, reminding himself he was the secret joker for Count Desmond. Just then, Victor pushed the axe aside with his sword, getting in close to warn Cecil not to think he'd fall for any tricks. Cecil shifted the axe and used it to leap out of the way of Victor's next move. The knight didn't see that coming and quickly glanced up. Cecil swung the axe again, but Victor dodged just in time. He retaliated with his sword, but Cecil stepped back to avoid the hit, then lunged forward with a solid kick right to Victor's face. The knight almost lost his balance but recovered quickly. Cecil pushed down hard, creating a massive shockwave that sent Victor's helmet flying. There was a moment where we saw Victor's bloodied face and blonde hair, breathing heavily. Victor looked up to see Cecil moving closer. Our boy picked up his sword from the ground and said he liked axes but swords fit him better. Victor demanded to know who he was. Cecil pulled off his helmet and introduced himself as Cecil Perdium, the young lord of Perdium. Victor couldn't believe what he was seeing. He burst into laughter, shocked that the toughest knight in the north just got taken down by a total scoundrel. Cecil said he wanted to show him who the real strongest knight was. Victor smirked, calling Cecil arrogant. The knight didn't care about how the scoundrel set up the trap. He understood that using every trick in the book was key to winning. The process of war didn't matter. The only thing that counted was being the last one standing. Victor got pumped, releasing his mana as he took a fighting stance. Cecil raised his sword ready to go and asked Victor to bring it on while everyone else on the battlefield fought their own battles. As the fire flickered around them, the two charged at each other. Victor swung hard, aiming for Cecil's head, but he managed to push the sword away. Victor launched a series of big swings, but Cecil dodged them effortlessly. When Victor swung from the side again, Cecil deflected it, then tried to press his advantage. Victor pushed back, struggling to keep up as the scoundrel blocked his strikes. Suddenly, Cecil kicked Victor's hand, forcing him to stumble back. Victor spat out blood, losing his balance, but just as Cecil tried to capitalize on it, he blocked Cecil's next attack. Regaining his footing, Cecil noticed the scratch on his armor from Victor's last strike, and the knight smiled in satisfaction. With renewed energy, Victor charged again, but Cecil blocked the attack and tried to swing back. They kept trading blows, locking swords, and pushing against each other with gritted teeth. Victor slowly gained the upper hand, pushing Cecil's sword down, then swinging at his head. Just in time, Cecil pulled his sword back up to block, then yanked Victor closer, kicking his leg to throw him off balance. Cecil wasted no time, charging back in with his sword out. Victor rolled away just in time to dodge, then kicked up sand with his sword to throw it in Cecil's face. Our boy noticed the attack coming, so he quickly covered his face with his hand. Victor seized the chance and lunged at him with his sword. As the blade approached, Cecil had to admit that Victor was one serious knight, even with his upgraded powers from the third core. There really wasn't much of a gap between them. Back in his past life, Cecil had started a war and gone against Count Desmond, with Victor standing in his way. Eventually, Cecil managed to beat him after they clashed swords over and over. But that fight had cost him too much time, and he ended up losing Perdium because of it. He realized then that Perdium was doomed, especially with guys like Victor intent on tearing it down. So he made a vow to himself to bring nothing but death to anyone who threatened him or his family. Now, hopping back to the present, we see Cecil raising his sword, charging it up with his mana. He drove it into Victor's stomach and blood gushed out, staining the sand beneath them. Cecil was able to block Victor's sword by pushing it in between his arms. Victor called out to Count Desmond, but Cecil pulled out his sword and watched. Victor crumpled to the ground, taking in the burning chaos around them. Cecil glared at him, knowing Victor was done for. Just as he turned to leave, Victor shouted after him, asking who he really was. He went on to say that the Cecil he knew was just a nobody from Perdium, the loser of the North. Victor chuckled at his own words, realizing how pointless it was. At this point, Cecil's identity didn't matter at all. Victor told him he enjoyed their fight and then passed away. Cecil just turned and walked away from him. In the next scene, we see Cecil helping Jillian walk by, supporting his arm and holding his hand. When the boy looked up, he spotted his dad and the soldiers waiting for them, all of them breathing heavily. Turning to the side, he noticed Belinda and his mercenaries waiting nearby. Cecil smiled and asked his soldiers if everyone was okay. Belinda and the mercenaries quickly rushed over to him, chatting about how this was the wildest war they'd ever been in. One of them asked Cecil about the magic they'd seen, while another mentioned he had goosebumps all over. Cecil thanked the mercenaries for sticking with him, telling them they did an awesome job. Kaior jokingly called him Gramps and asked if he really needed help walking just because he got stabbed. Jillian brushed it off, saying it was nothing, but Belinda told him to quit joking and let her check his wound. Cecil then asked Belinda where Vanessa was, and she explained that Vanessa had passed out after using all her energy. She mentioned that Fergus had taken Vanessa and the other mages inside the castle. Just then, someone called out to Cecil, and when he turned around, Randolph hugged him tightly, saying he was proud of him and that he was truly the successor of Perdium. Cecil told the knight captain he did great too. Then he turned to his dad and told him he did well too. Zivalter looked at Cecil with a worried expression, moved closer and gave him a hug, saying he was amazed at what Cecil had accomplished. Cecil was surprised to hear that Zivalter initially thought his plan was impossible. Zivalter never expected his son to pull it off. Cecil explained that he only managed it because he held off the enemies from the castle wall. The Count smiled and insisted that Cecil was wrong, saying he did it all on his own. He raised Cecil's hand and shouted that they were victorious, announcing that Perdium had won the war. The men cheered along with the Count, excitedly joining in the celebration, and the mercenaries joined in the shouting, too. Cecil was rattled by the sound of their voices, but managed to smile, reminding himself that this was why he came back. Suddenly, our boy clenched his fist as memories of Duke Delphine flooded in. He told himself the war wasn't over yet. Randolph mentioned he was going to check on their soldiers, and he asked the Count what his plans were. Zivalter suggested his son do the same, and urged Cecil to rest for a bit since there'd be a lot to tackle later. But our boy wasn't having it. He turned down his dad's suggestion. Zivalter didn't see that coming. Cecil insisted they didn't have time to waste, explaining they needed to secure a formal surrender from Count Dygald as soon as possible. Zivalter told him to chill about it and said he'd go out the next day. Cecil shot back that it would be too late by then and declared he was heading to Dygald territory with his mercenaries right away. He asked his father to give him the authority of a lord's deputy. Randolph looked surprised by this. Zivalter questioned whether they really needed to rush when he and his mercenaries were wiped out. With a serious expression, Cecil reiterated that the war wasn't over yet. The Count was taken aback by this, and our boy explained how Count Dygald had broken their alliance and declared war to grab their territory. He told Zivalter they couldn't afford to let this slide. If they did, the Count would just strike again. Our boy told his dad they needed to act fast, use their edge, and demand reparations on their terms so they wouldn't have to deal with Count Dygald ever again. Zivalter couldn't believe what he was hearing. Sure, it made sense to celebrate victory for a moment, but his son was already strategizing their next move. Zivalter told him they had to keep pushing to end things decisively, and he gave Cecil the green light. Our boy thanked him, and before leaving, Zivalter reminded him that Count Dygald was once on their side and had sworn loyalty to the royal family. He asked Cecil to treat the Count with respect where he could. Cecil just smiled and reassured his dad not to worry about it. He turned to Kaior and Belinda, asking if they were good to go. Kaior said he was fine, and Cecil hopped on his horse, telling his men to follow him as they sped towards Dygald territory. Meanwhile, at Castle Dygald, Thamos was going off, throwing things around. He couldn't believe they messed up. He took the secret treaty because everyone knew how strong Desmond was, and yet here they were, the powerful Desmond getting beaten by the tiny Perdium territory. Thamos' right-hand guy, Lowell, told him to chill out, but Thamos snapped back, asking if the situation looked chill to him. He wanted Lowell to get the surrender talks ready and tell the bureaucrats to prep for reparations. Lowell hesitated, asking if Thamos was serious. Thamos thought Zivalter was a fool for respecting customs and honor, and felt confident Zivalter would go for the negotiations, especially since Perdium badly needed cash. He planned to make Count Desmond take the blame once they were done negotiating. Lowell reminded Thamos they're already drained their finances in the war and asked where they'd find money for reparations. Thamos grabbed him by the neck and started choking him, calling him an idiot for not thinking straight. He angrily ordered Lowell to squeeze the money out of the citizens. With a scary glare, Thamos asked if Lowell felt bad doing that because he was also a peasant. Struggling, Lowell managed to say the peasants weren't more important than him. Thamos threw him down and told him to remember who was in charge. Blood dripped from Lowell's mouth as he glared at Thamos, tired of his oppression. He knew the people couldn't take much more of this and might revolt soon. Just then, a soldier barged in, saying there was trouble. The Perdium soldiers were already on their way. In the next scene, the mercenaries were in the Count's office. Thamos was sitting there waiting for Zavalter, with Lowell behind him. Thamos couldn't believe how quickly the soldiers had arrived and promised himself he wouldn't let Zavalter have his way. Just as he thought this, Cecil walked in, with Belinda and Kaur by his side. Our boy asked Thamos if he was ready for the surrender talks. Thamos was shocked to see Cecil and asked where his brother was. Cecil said his dad was busy focusing on getting their territory back. He claimed he was in charge of the negotiations, and with a serious look, he ordered his men to bring Thamos to his knees. A few hours earlier, Cecil and his crew were riding their horses toward Degald territory. Kaur mentioned that Count Degald has a knack for making a quick getaway and was shocked that the Count ditched his soldiers and fled so fast. Gordon apologized to Kaur for letting the Count slip away, but Kaur smiled and said it was really Jillian's fault, insisting he and the other men did their jobs just fine. Cecil, overhearing Kaur's thoughts on Jillian, started to wonder if he should let Kaur have his shot at fighting Jillian someday. Kaur leaned in and asked if Cecil was thinking about sparing Count Degald by negotiating a surrender. He wanted to know why. They needed to wrap up the negotiation with some reparations. Kaur thought it sounded way too complicated and asked why they didn't just march in and wipe everything out. Belinda found that suggestion a bit silly and pointed out that disputes between nobles can't just be resolved like brawls between mercenaries. Kaur took offense, saying that both mercenaries and nobles are human, and questioned what makes nobles any better. He reminded them that the Degalds were the ones who started the fight, so why should they worry about their enemy's position? Cecil asked Kaur to drop that line of thinking, saying it was something his father would have done. This made Belinda uneasy, so she asked Cecil what he meant by that. He just smiled and said he was different, and planned to make the Degald territory his own. Then the scene changes, showing Kaur and Gazelle lifting the Count up by his arms, knocking over his table. Thamos was confused and told them to let him go, but they forced him to kneel in front of Cecil. Belinda moved closer to her master and gently asked if he was sure about this. He assured her he was. She reminded him that she tried to stop him when his father questioned him. Thamos told Cecil that he swore allegiance to the kingdom and questioned if he thought he could get away with treating the king's subjects this way. He ordered Cecil to show some respect. Cecil pointed his sword at him, and the Count quickly fell silent. Cecil explained that Thamos was a traitor who was fooled by the enemy's tempting offers, breaking their alliance to try to take Perdium. He made it clear that only death awaits those who harm Perdium. The Count started to panic, asking Cecil to quit joking around, not believing he was actually going to kill him. Cecil told him he needed to face the consequences of pushing so many lives into danger. Thamos began laughing, realizing that Cecil was truly serious and was definitely going to kill him. Our boy raised his sword, but before he could swing it, Thamos asked him to hold on. He said he had a price to pay and offered Cecil the territory. Belinda and Lowell were stunned by this, but Cecil just smiled because he knew Thamos would pull something like this. He reminded the Count that you have to be from the same bloodline or a rightful successor to inherit territory. You can't just trade it like it's some random goods. Thamos told our boy not to worry, saying he'd handle the issues himself. He suggested they could just say Cecil was a distant blood relative. Thamos even let slip that he'd have his people forge the inheritance rights, and all Cecil had to do was accept it. The Count turned to Lowell, telling him to stop loafing around and go grab a pen and paper. Cecil decided to push back a little more, expressing doubts about the arrangement. Thamos assured Cecil he'd still pay reparations, even though he didn't have money right now. He said he could collect some through taxes and begged for some time. Thamos pleaded with our boy to let him off the hook, and Cecil asked if he really valued his life that much. He said he'd give him a chance, and Thamos was relieved. Cecil dragged his armor and took the Count outside, throwing him down in front of his subjects. The crowd was shocked to see their lord treated like this. Thamos looked at Cecil, confused about why he was being humiliated like that, but Cecil reminded him to watch his words. He revealed that the people would decide whether Thamos lived or died. The Count didn't get it at first, so Cecil called out to the citizens of Degald, introducing himself as the young lord of Perdium. He told them that their lord had declared war against Perdium and lost, and now Thamos wanted to collect reparations from the very people who suffered. The crowd was taken aback, and Thamos had previously taken so much from them to start this war. They said the nobles should sort out their issues themselves. Cecil said he'd offer them mercy as the deputy lord of Perdium, and gave them a choice: save their lord and pay a huge reparation, or let him die and have their land absorbed by Perdium. He promised they wouldn't have to shoulder the burden of defeat if they did this. Thamos couldn't believe his ears. He never expected Cecil to insult him like that. Before he could process what was happening, someone tossed a rock at his head. Shocked, he barely had a moment to react before more rocks rained down on him. The citizens picked up pitchforks and stones, closing in on their lord. One guy confronted Thamos about taking his mother's keepsake and the food meant for his kids, asking if he even realized how much pain he caused. Thamos was speechless as the crowd turned on him, attacking him with their pitchforks and stones. They didn't give him a chance to beg for mercy. He could only cover his head and scream in pain. Cecil walked up to his crew and told them they could head back now since the war was over. He turned to Belinda and said he needed to talk to his dad. Belinda thought their boy must have a plan for dealing with his father and reassured him that she wasn't worried. The scene shifts to Perdium, where Zivalter and his council look stunned after hearing that Count Degald is dead. Zivalter asks his son to repeat what he just said, and Cecil confirms that the Count is indeed dead. Zivalter reminds him that he'd asked him to treat the Count with as much respect as possible. Cecil quickly assures him he didn't forget, explaining that he figured this was the best move after seeing the Count for himself. He adds that the Count would have gone after them again if they'd let him live. Albert and Homern are shocked at this news. Homern can't believe it. Cecil reminds them that the Degald had attacked Perdium with an army of over 7,000 men, and it was clear they couldn't pull that off alone. He reveals that Desmond provided the troops while Randolph was pulling the strings behind the scenes. The guys are incredulous. They can't believe two major powers are gunning for them, especially since the Desmond territory is supposed to be neutral. They wonder why they're backing the Degolds. Cecil already has a hunch about why they didn't get any help from their allies. It's because of Amelia. She killed the messengers to cut off all the communication, which is her usual move. Once Cecil takes control of the Degald territory, things are going to change. The Desmond and Randolph counties won't be able to attack Perdium immediately, since it'll now share a border with the Degald territory. If any of their foes make a move, our boy will be ready to respond right away. Zivalter starts to understand why his son killed Thamos. He reminds him that just because he took out the Lord doesn't mean the land belongs to him. It has to go to a blood relative or rightful heir. Cecil pulls out a scroll and places it on the table. When Zivalter opens it, he sees that Thamos wrote that Cecil is a distant blood relative and the first successor of the territory. Zivalter is shocked. Cecil reveals he got that from Count Degald himself and assures his dad that this document will help them bypass the inheritance issues. Zivalter's still in disbelief but manages to focus and asks Cecil if he can handle ruling a territory with his current manpower. Our boy just smiles and tells his dad not to worry, saying he's got someone perfect for the job. The scene shifts again, this time to the Austin territory in the Cyron Kingdom. We find ourselves in a bar where people are cheering and yelling as they watch some guys gamble. Among them, there's a man with green hair who's going all in. He picks up 4 dice in a cup, shakes them a few times, and then slams them on the table to show his opponent. The opponent is a massive bald guy with 2 even bigger goons behind him. The bald man warns Claude that he'll have problems if he pulls a fast one. Claude grins and says there's no need to be so serious. It's all just for fun. He lifts the cup, revealing 4 dice stacked perfectly on top of each other, all showing the same number. With a smirk on his face, Claude tells the guy to hurry up and place a bet. In the next scene, we find ourselves in a hall where soldiers and mercenaries are all gathered. Cecil, Zivalter, and Randolph are up on stage. Our boy kneels before his dad, and Zivalter recognizes everything Cecil's done, announcing that he'll officially be the Baron of Fenris, thanks to his majesty. As soon as he says this, everyone starts cheering and shouting Cecil's name. He's officially a lord now. Then the scene jumps back to the past. We see Cecil in his dad's office, studying a map on the table. He explains to the council that the Degald territory has 5 baronies, not counting the lands managed directly by the territory. He shares his plan to set up his base in Fenris, right in the center of everything. When he asks if anyone has questions, it's pretty clear that no one really thinks their views matter. Albert leans in and whispers to Zivalter. His dad tells Cecil to do what he feels is right, saying someone has to take charge eventually. Cecil thanks him for the nod of approval. Zivalter clears his throat and mentions that their territory has been bleeding money because of the war. Cecil, curious, asks what he means by bleeding. His dad suggests selling some runestones to help out. Cecil then tells him he doesn't have any runestones at the moment, and Zivalter is taken aback. Our boy reminds him he used them all to blow up the castle gate, but not to worry, he'll mine more. Fast forward back to the present, and we see Belinda greeting her master with a bright smile. She invites him to sit down and eat. Gillian bows his head, awkwardly calling Cecil young lord, before correcting himself to just lord and congratulating him. Cower chimes in, saying Cecil has really made a name for himself now. Belinda, hands together, shares how she was always worried about what he'd turn into, saying her hard work raising him has paid off. Cower jokes that Cecil must be brutal and rude because of her, prompting Belinda to kick him playfully in the stomach. Just then, someone calls out to him. When Cecil turns, he sees Elena and another girl with light blue hair. Elena comes up and asks if she should call him brother or lord. Cecil tells her she can call him whatever she likes. He turned to the shy girl with blue hair, calling her Rachel. She said hi to our boy Cecil, who asked her to let him know if his sister was bothering her. He mentioned that Elena can be pretty rough when she doesn't like something. Elena hit her brother's chest when she heard him say that. Cecil then turned to Gillian and mentioned that his daughter is all healed now. Gillian said it's all thanks to him. Our boy clapped his hands to get everyone's attention and thanked his mercenaries for following his orders during the war. He announced that he's now the Lord of Fenris, and his base would be moving there from Perdium. He planned to hire them as his personal army, which shocked the men. They wanted to know if they'd have permanent positions. Cecil assured them they would, and said he intended to train them as knights. The mercenaries were taken aback by this, but Cecil explained that their performance in the recent war showed they were worthy. He reassured them that they were qualified. Belinda moved closer to him and pointed out that an army this size would cost a lot. Cecil just smiled and said they'd need to make a lot of money. Then he turned to Jillian to check on his condition. Jillian said he was in good shape, and Cecil ordered him to lead the people to Fenris and wait for him. Jillian looked surprised and asked why he wouldn't be following. Cecil explained that Fenris would be in disarray after the war, so he wanted Jillian to go ahead and fix things first. Jillian didn't look thrilled about the task, almost as if he felt pushed away. But Cecil told him he trusted him the most, which caught Jillian off guard. Our boy tapped his arm, saying that's why he left it to him. Jillian bowed his head and wished him a safe trip. Cecil got closer to Belinda and Kaur, telling them they'd be going with him and asking them to get ready. Belinda wanted to know where they were headed, and Cecil revealed they were off to the Austin territory of the Siran Kingdom. Belinda couldn't believe they were going overseas. Kaur asked the guy if he meant the place known for its games. Belinda told her master that she loves to travel. Kaur then asked if they would be playing some games now that the war is over. Cecil said they weren't going there for fun. Next, Vanessa asked someone if she could suck it just one more time. Alfoy was totally shocked by what she said and quickly backed away. He asked her what exactly she wanted to suck. Vanessa explained that if she sucked his mana like last time, she might be able to use all the magic she has in her head. Alfoy wanted to know why she'd take his mana, and she told him Cecil said he was a mana battery. Alfoy looked stunned. Cecil walked in and said Alfoy was still as energetic as always. Alfoy asked our boy to do something about Vanessa since she kept trying to drain his mana. Our boy ignored him and checked in on Vanessa, who said she was fine. Cecil asked if she was nervous since it was her first time in real combat, patted her on the head, and told her she did great. Vanessa blushed and thanked him. Alfoy chimed in that he also helped out, and Cecil gave him some props for doing his part. Alfoy gritted his teeth at that and warned our boy that things would change when he got back to the magic tower. Cecil dropped the bomb that he was actually traveling with them. The scene shifts to the Austin territory in the Siran Kingdom, where Cecil walks into the Kraken gambling house with Belinda, Kaur, and Alfoy. Kaur was pumped to be in the gambling house, saying he missed the vibe and smell of the place. Alfoy couldn't believe Cecil took him to a gambling house. He thought they were heading to the magic tower. Cecil tossed Kaur a pouch full of cash and told him to have a blast with Alfoy, saying he'd call him when he needed him. Kaur was stoked to have some gambling money. Alfoy asked Kaur how they were planning to have fun with the cash. Kaur grinned and placed his hand on Alfoy's shoulder, explaining that he knows how to use magic but doesn't quite get how the world works. Curious, Alfoy asked what he meant by that, and Kaur just smiled, telling him to watch and learn. He promised to show him how to make money with money. At that moment, Belinda and Cecil joined them. The maid told her master that he could be honest with her and asked if he was there just to have some fun. She assured him she wouldn't bug him if he wanted to gamble a bit, saying he deserved it after all he's done. Cecil reassured her he wasn't there to gamble. He was actually looking for a man he wanted to make the steward of the territory. Apparently, this guy was living in the gambling house for some reason, and Cecil wanted to get him out before he lost everything. Belinda was shocked, unable to believe her master would consider making a gambler the steward. Cecil insisted there were special circumstances and told her not to worry, saying the guy was good with money. Before he could say the man's name, someone yelled at Claude, calling him a crazy bastard, saying they caught him. Cecil and Belinda quickly turned around. Meanwhile, in another part of the gambling house, a crowd was gathered around a table, talking about how strange it was that Claude had been winning. They said he deserved whatever he was about to get for bragging about his education. At Claude's table, one of the big guys working for the bald man had him pinned down, while another guy was pulling out a sword. The crowd urged Captain Crank, the bald man, to cut off Claude's hand. Crank reminded Claude he had told him not to pull any tricks, accusing him of swapping dice and using a weighted one. He crushed the die in his hand and asked Claude if he had been scheming the whole time. Claude protested, saying he hadn't done anything like that, and it was Crank who was playing tricks. Crank told him not to feel mistreated, and with a smirk stated they could never fully understand each other. Hearing this, Claude clenched his teeth in frustration as Crank ordered his guy to go ahead and cut off his hand. As the man raised his sword, Claude shut his eyes, sweating and panicking, when suddenly someone said it was a fun game and asked Crank to let him join in. Claude opened his eyes and saw Cecil blocking the sword. With a furious look, Crank demanded to know who Cecil was. Our guy introduced himself as Baron Cecil Fenris of the Luthania Kingdom.
And hey, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Zucker Manhwa for more epic recaps coming your way.